Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace episode 163 on Sifted Games at sifted.net. We got a big show for you guys today. Not as big as the last couple weeks.
Nah, but what is?
Our last two episodes have been at least 3 hours and 15 minutes. Not going to be quite that long today. We do have some great topics to discuss with you guys. Also have something to show you guys before we get started. So I told you last week that we got our stickers in for one of our Patreon tiers, and I brought them to show them to you guys. Hopefully, should we go to the one shot, Sam, do you think, to show them the best? Yeah. So we have 3 different sticker designs, and if you're a patron at $15 or more per month, you'll get a mailing that has all 3 in the mailing. So you'll get all 3 of these. So first I'm going to show you the smallest one, and hopefully it shows up on camera. So this uses the kind of graffiti-styled Sifted logo. These stickers are clear. The gold was supposed to be Pittsburgh gold, like the Steelers and the Penguins, but I think they got the coloring a little goofy. It looks a little bit more orange than gold. But this is small, something you can put...
49ers gold.
Yeah, I guess it is actually a little closer to that. But this is something you can put on your car window or whatever. It's clear, so you'll only see the orange or gold whenever you actually apply the sticker. And then we have a white joystick sticker. All these are vinyl, by the way, and you can put them on anything, and they'll be good in the weather. So if you put these on your car window or whatever, they should hold up. You'll get one of those. And then the third one is a mini bumper sticker. It just says Sifter, and then it has the joystick logo as the I for Sifter. So put these things on your car, folks. Put them on the back. So people are sitting in traffic and they're like, what the hell is
that? Why is he softer?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. You'll probably get a lot of questions about this one if you put it on your car. But anyway, you'll get one of each of these if you're pledging at $15 or more. If you were pledging last month at $15 or more and maybe you dropped your pledge for this month, we're going to retroactively send these out. So we'll be checking all the data on Patreon and making sure everybody who has earned one of these mailings gets one of them. One thing I would ask from you guys, if you would not mind, is send us on Patreon a direct message with your shipping address. We're going to have to do that, obviously, for every single person. I think there's over like 100 or something.
Yeah, you should be able to do a thing on Patreon that like asks people.
So one of the issues we've had is when we switched over to our Patreon, and again, pay attention to this, guys. When we switched over to our Patreon and changed like the goals and the tiers, it didn't automatically slot people into the new tiers. Like those people have to physically say, I want to pledge at that tier to get added to it. So when we set up the tier for this, when you set up a tier on Patreon, you can say, okay, is there something associated with this that you need to ship? And so I did. And basically what it means is when someone pledges to that, they'll ask them for their address right away. So while there are well over 100 people who are pledging at this tier or higher, if you actually look at that tier, there's only like 5 people in it. So one, if you could send us, if you're pledging 15 or more per month, or you did last month, send us a direct message with your address. The other thing I would ask is for you guys to go and physically pledge to those tiers. It's just a snafu with the way Patreon works. I send a message to their support, and they're like, yeah, we're aware of it, we're working on it, blah, blah, blah. So I don't think there's a fix coming soon. So make sure you go and pledge at a specific tier, and that'll help us shipping stuff out to you folks. And also send us a message with your address. If you don't do it, it's okay. We're going to go and we're going to send out messages to everybody. It would be a lot easier if you guys just sent it to us instead of us having to go and track every single person down. But anyway, I'm really excited with how these stickers turned out. And I hope you guys like them too. And hopefully you'll stick them someplace where other people will see them and we'll get some promotion out of them. So enjoy. They will be coming very soon. As soon as you get us your address, we'll be shipping them out probably this Saturday. A lot of mailings, like 100 and some mailings we have to do. So anyway, really happy with how these turned out, and I hope you guys like them too. And with that, let's get on with the show. One note, I put this in the chat, but I am going to mention it in the show. The live version of GameFace today will have no show graphics because our images got corrupted somehow on the external drive that we used to bring everything over here. Thank God the B-roll didn't get messed up, but all the images did. So our lower thirds are going to be put in, and people who are watching the archive of this are like, what are you talking about? Because they're going to be in that version of the show. But for you guys live, there's not going to be any lower thirds today. So with that, let's get on with the show. We're going to kick off the show with a game that we talked about last week. And as always, we kind of do our initial impressions of a game and then deliver our final impressions. And that game is Yoshi's Crafted World. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this game because it's not I mean, I can look at the data on Sifted and see how many people care about each game. This has not been a game that's been tracking really high.
You can look at my face and see how much I care about this game.
Right. Despite the fact that this is really like the only Switch first-party game in a while, and it will be the only one for a while. Yeah. So we are going to talk about it again. And I think the main reason I want to talk about it again is because my impressions of the game changed pretty drastically the more I played it. So the first thing I should say is the game ended up being way longer than I thought it was going to be. Like, way longer. So, like I said last week, the way the game is set up, it has a 2D map screen, like a 2D Mario game. And you just follow predetermined paths through the map, and you can kind of see, or at least I thought I could see, how big the game was. Well, it also has kind of a fog of war that obscures some of that stuff. So as I made my way through the map, it ended up cracking open, and the game ended up being much bigger than I thought. By the time everything was said and done, I'm guessing this game took me almost 20 hours to finish, which is crazy for a Yoshi game. I mean, most Yoshi games you can finish in like 6 or 7 hours. The other thing I forgot to mention last week that I should have is that this game is not developed by Nintendo. It is made by a developer called Good Feel, which I love. I love that name. Only a Japanese developer would be called Good Feel. And I think that may have contributed to some of the game's delays, because if you remember, this game was shown when the Switch was announced. This game has been in development for a really long time, and now that I've played it, I kind of understand why. Another thing that is...
So now we're just waiting on, what, Shin Megami Tensei 4 or whatever?
That's pretty much the last one left of the...
From that initial direct.
From that initial batch, yeah. And who knows when that's coming. Yeah. Like, we've got like one trailer of that game still at this point. So, the other thing that changed drastically for me, last week I said it was really, really easy. And it still is easy, but there's kind of some caveats with that. So I talked about last week about how there are costumes in the game. And as you play the game, you earn coins, and then there's a bubblegum machine where you can go and basically buy a loot box with your in-game currency. You don't have to spend real money on them. And basically how the costumes work is they're extra health segments. And then the costumes are rated on rarity. So once you get a super rare costume, it actually completely doubles your health bar in the game. So basically it's a covering that it has its own health bar, and once it loses all of its hit points, it disappears, and then you're just left with Yoshi. And if you play with a super rare costume, which gives you double the health, the game is really easy. But what I found as the game was wearing on, and I got into the later parts of the game, is once you lose your costume, you can't put it back on again until you restart the level again. And the game has tons of mid-mission checkpoints. And so if you didn't want to start the whole mission over again, you'd have to finish that level with just one health bar. And what I found is in the latter parts of the game, finishing some of these levels with one health bar, it's pretty frickin' challenging. It's not Sekiro or Dark Souls challenging, but you have to be on point. You have to be really, really good to get through some of them. And again, the checkpoints, they're not generous. Some of them are kind of evil as far as how far you have to go back if you die, but at least you don't have to play the whole level again. So I would have to say that this game in particular, it maybe changed more than any game from the last couple years from what I played at first to what it ultimately ended up being. So it's about 20 hours long, and the other thing about that is once you finish the game, it's not over. A whole brand new kind of branch of worlds opens up, and another boss opens up. Another thing I mentioned about last week was you didn't really have to worry about collecting enough flowers to move on. That stayed true for the most part for the main campaign. The final boss, you need 30 flowers. And I did have to go back and collect, I think, 2 to get to that 30 for the final boss. But then those next extra levels, the game plus, so to speak, to get into those levels, you need another 30 flowers for the first one. Then you need another 50 flowers for the next one. Then you need, I think, 70 or 90 for that third level. And then once you do that, you need more to fight the boss. So basically, to complete the game in its entirety, you need pretty much every flower. And that's a pretty tall task. Because I'll be honest with you, by the time I got to the end of this, I was pretty much done with it. The other thing I would say is the more I played and the more it demanded of me as a player, the more the cracks in the control scheme started to show up a little bit. So, there's basically 2 parts of the gameplay. There's the platforming, and a lot of that is puzzle solving. There is some challenging platforming towards the end, but most of it is just puzzle solving, kind of poking around the environment, finding ways to get to the end of the level. The other part is tossing the eggs. And one thing that I found as you start playing the harder parts of the game is you need to have very quick response times going from the platforming to the egg shooting. And there is like a delay. I don't know if it's an animation that needs to play out before it will bring up the egg throwing, but it infuriated me. So many times I was like, okay, now I need to bring up the egg, and I hit the button to bring up the egg cursor, and just nothing happened. And I'd tap it again, and it would come up. Now, there is, and I went and looked in the menus, there is an alternative setting for that. You can set it up so if you just hold the button, it will bring up the cursor, and then you can move it around, and then you release it to fire the egg. But in the heat of everything else in the game, I found it to be way too cumbersome, and it didn't work great. So visually, I've seen a lot of people say they like the art style. I agree. And there's some really cool... I mean, they play the whole paper motif to a T. Like I also mentioned last week that I thought some of the cinematics had frame rate issues. As it turns out, that was intentional. So the cinematics in this game generally are paper being turned into a boss or turned into something. And I think they tried to make it look like it was stop motion animation, but it just looks really stuttery and weird. But they do hold up this art style all the way to the end. It does start to get pretty creative with it towards the end of the game. And I would say that this is one of those rare games in 2019 where the more you play it, the better it gets. As far as like the challenges it's asking of you, of the player, as far as the visual style, and finally, it kind of started to put up a fight as well. So I like this game more now than I did when I talked about it last week, and I just wanted to kind of bring it up. I would say it's one of maybe the best 3D Yoshi game ever. I know that's not a high bar to cross. It's not a bold claim. It's not exactly a hot take, so to speak. But it's a legit game. I really thought when I had played kind of the first handful of hours of it that it was just kind of a flash in the pan, fly-by-night type of game. And then I kept digging into it and found that it was something totally different.
Yeah, well, these guys, I mean, I looked them up while you were talking about the later stuff, and they did do Woolly World, and they did Epic Yarn. Been doing stuff for Nintendo. They're not owned by Nintendo, but they have been doing stuff for Nintendo for over 10 years.
Yeah.
I would guess the delay on this came from switching to Unreal.
Possible.
Just because, I mean, we've seen even other major studios have run into issues. If you watch that, new engines are scary. If you watch that the Days Gone little feature thing they put out, they talk about how there's like things you probably don't know about Days Gone or something. And one of the developers talks about how when they got the Unreal Engine, they found out that there was no support for two-wheeled vehicles. And of course, he's a biker, so that's a problem.
Yeah.
So in their workaround for it is that all the bikes in the game are in fact four-wheeled vehicles, but the other two wheels are like bent horizontally, so they're not touching the ground, and then they're made invisible.
Huh.
And intangible.
Are you kidding me?
So if you looked at like the actual object that the bike is in Days Gone in the Unreal Engine, it's like a four-wheeled bike, but like the second set of two tires is like bent sideways and intangible. So like you're riding and it's all balanced, so it feels like you're riding a normal bike. But there was no support for just a vehicle with two wheels, so they just like bent the other wheels horizontally and did it that way.
That's crazy.
So like figuring out your workarounds on even an engine as well supported as Unreal can be a test. So yeah, that's probably what because these guys have been doing kind of the cutesy stuff for Nintendo for a long time now.
Yeah. And their games in the past, I felt like, looked better, relatively speaking, to what else was on the platform than this game does.
Woolly World definitely seemed sharper than this.
Yeah, the texturing in this game...
Just like an image quality.
If you play this game on a big TV, like I have a 65-inch plasma that I played it on, and it suffers on a bigger display. You guys are probably watching this on your...
There was a definite crispness to Woolly World that this doesn't seem to have.
Yeah, you guys are watching this probably on a computer monitor right now, and if you are... The game looks great on a computer monitor. Like, we're looking at it right now on our monitor from our TriCaster, and it looks amazing. But you put it on a bigger TV, it starts to crack up a little bit. The other thing I would say, too, is that the game is a little mean-spirited. And seriously, there's some parts in the game where you can just tell the developers are like, oh, we're going to stick it to them right here. I actually struggle. I know I mentioned last week that maybe this is a great kids game. I struggle now to see a kid finishing this game, to be honest with you. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't have kids, so maybe kids are way better at games than I think they are, and they
kids
probably
are
are.
pretty good at games.
And they probably are.
We were.
But I would think that this game would be something that you would have to play with your kid and kind of help them at certain points.
I don't know. Have you played NES games recently? Like, you play some of that shit, and you're like, how did we do this when we were 10? Like, they're really hard.
Yeah, I mean, the other part, too, though,
You got nothing else to play. You're just going to throw yourself at that thing over and over
Yeah,
and over
yeah,
again.
exactly. The other thing, too, is that the games weren't that long back then. If you could just make it all the way through the game very quickly, you'd finish most of them in, like, 4 or 5 hours. And a lot of times it's, you'd spend 60 playing a game, but it's just because you kept dying over and over and you wouldn't give up. So,
I mean, how many people finished Ghosts and Goblins?
No, probably none.
And then even if you did, you then had to play it again.
Right, yeah.
That's just mean.
Yeah. This game does have some mean parts, and it's shocking, too, because you're like, wait, this is a Yoshi game. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, who decided to design this way? So this game, actually, if you're an adult who likes Nintendo's games and you want a challenge, like, I would recommend this game. I think it'll put a lot of people to the test, believe it or not. And it does start out pretty easy. You're probably listening to me right now. You'll start playing and be like, what the hell? Shane was right when he talked about it the first time. Keep playing. And you'll get to some parts in the game where it really, really tests your mettle. So I like Yoshi's Crafted World more than I did at first blush. I ended up enjoying it a lot more. Played all the way to the end. At least spent 20 hours with it. It's, I said last week as well that, maybe this game should only be worth $40. I don't know if I'm going to come off of that yet. I think it's still hard to rationalize just a single-player game like this for $60 if it's not a gigantic 60, 70-hour game. But like I said, there's extra content. If you have the fortitude to go back and collect every frickin' flower, and I mean, that's what you have to do, then maybe you'll get something out of the extra content. The other thing, too, is that those extra levels are expert difficulty. So even once you unlock them, getting through them is no easy task. So just be warned. But anyway, overall, my impressions improved as I played the game. I enjoyed it more. I know, like I said at the outset when we started discussing this topic, there's not a lot to choose from for Switch right now. And I would think that this is a viable candidate for you to buy now, whereas last week I would have said it's not. So there you go. Yoshi's Crafted World. I swear that's the last time we're going to talk about it. I swear.
Until the Game of the Year conversation.
Yeah, no, well, we'll see. Best platformer, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about something that broke as we were recording the show last week, and we didn't really get a chance to kind of absorb all the information and then discuss it. We talked about it in passing, kind of. Mm-hmm. And that is BioWare. And initially, it was Jason Schreier's BioWare article. Mm-hmm. Since then, VentureBeat wrote an article that basically backed up everything that Jason Schreier had written on Kotaku and added some extra stuff about the next Dragon Age. And then today, another story about Dragon Age came
Schreier
out.
put up his own story about Dragon Age 4, which goes into much more depth about the version of it that existed before they rebooted it in 2017.
Yeah.
And how that now there was just basically, there was a version of it at some point which was basically Anthem with dragons, which sounds like a very bad idea. But it sounds like BioWare's been struggling.
Big time.
Particularly in this era where EA wants games as services hell or high water. I don't know, man. Like I'm a big BioWare fan from back in the day. Loved the Baldur's Gate games, and I loved KOTOR, and I didn't like Jade Empire very much. I loved Mass Effect. The Mass Effect trilogy is my favorite thing from last generation, like by far, like without any question. I played 700 hours of those games, and I've actually been hankering to go back and do it again. I love Mass Effect. I do not like Dragon Age very much. Although I don't hate them. I hate the first Dragon Age. I do hate the first Dragon Age, but I don't hate 2. I don't hate 2 despite all of its hilarious flaws, and Inquisition was fine, although I don't remember much of it.
I never played Inquisition.
Yes, you did. You played Mass Effect Andromeda.
Oh.
Mass Effect Andromeda is almost the exact same thing except with a gun.
Here's an interesting factoid, though. The first ever game created or game page on Sifted was Dragon Age Inquisition.
Wow.
Brent created it as like the page that we looked at to figure out whether the site was working the way we wanted it to.
Now that game's almost half a decade old.
Yeah, just like Sifted. Yeah, so it makes perfect sense. What struck you the most about that story from Jason Schreier about BioWare?
I think the thing that struck me the most, you mean the one about the Anthem expose?
Yeah, the first
basically.
one. Yeah.
The thing that struck me the most is probably just how lacking in vision the team seemed to be from a leadership point of view for so long after Casey Hudson left.
I mean, the game really only found what it was. I mean, BioWare only figured out what the game was going to be like a year before it came out.
Yeah, like there's stuff we're talking about, like
they wasted so
when
much
they announced
time
the
and
actual release date, like they didn't have a full mission working yet
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was shocking.
Which does remind me, like, I know of some people that work at various BioWare places, and at one point when that release date popped, when the original release date popped up, I said in one of the Discord rooms, I'm like, oh, this is for this date for Anthem, and one of the BioWare people I know was like, I need to go ask someone something.
He's like, wait a minute. Was that the date? Was the date accurate? Did it end up being the legit date?
No, because remember they announced it was going to be like a certain day. It was like a March or something at some point, and then it slipped somewhere.
Oh, okay. So that was when it was
the original release
Gotcha.
date, which like slipped like a year basically.
Yeah.
Because they announced for like 2018
They did,
release
yeah.
date originally, like March 2018 or something, and that was like early 2017, mid 2017, and like no one even finished anything yet. And it slipped to the following, to Q1 the following year. Still the same fiscal year, but I think. But it's just the constant refrain, in addition to the whole like people would go into unused offices to cry, was like once Casey left, no one could decide what the game was.
Well, it sounded like there was no leadership.
No.
Nobody would make decisions. Instead, they'd go into these workshops, these brainstorms, and they'd sit there for 3 hours, and they'd think they'd have a solution, and then somebody would say, but what about this?
Mm-hmm.
And then it would paralyze the team, and they'd never make any decisions.
Yeah. Or if they
it
did,
languished.
once they implemented something, the game had changed to something else a year later by the time that was implemented, and you had to adjust it again all over again.
Like they said they took the flying in and out like 10 times.
Yep. The other thing that I think struck me was showing it to who's the head of EA, like the big
head of studios.
Yeah,
at
head
EA.
of studios.
Yeah.
And the first time they showed it to him, it didn't have flying. It was just running around shooting. And he's like, "What is this crap?" Like and then the second time they did put the flying in and practice that, it was apparently similar to what that first demo was at E3. And he's like, "This is amazing. This is exactly what it needs to be."
Yeah, he loved it once the flying was in it. Yeah.
The flying is really, the only thing that differentiates it.
It is.
From
Thank
anything.
God they put it in there. Holy cow.
I think even people that don't like the game can admit that.
Yeah.
It's just like it's astounding that and it explains.
I can't believe how good the game is. Honestly.
Well,
after reading that story, I cannot believe it's as good as it is.
Yeah, I mean, it feels about what I expected. It explained a lot. Reading that article explained a lot about the things about the game that I find to be shortcomings and all that. And they are, I loaded it up for the first time in a long time last night, and they have, done a couple. There's a couple improvements in there. Like it's easier to launch into things. It's a little more explicit towards you about like, how to launch this thing or where this quest is or who needs to be talked to and like. Like that you can interact with this thing. Like that was one of the things. Like you had to get pretty close to stuff to even realize you could do anything with them. Mm-hmm. And it's still moderately fun to tool around and blow stuff up and fly around and stuff. I don't know. But like reading that article really like it wasn't even so much like it was an explanation of what Anthem was and why it ended up the way it was. But like. The biggest thing for me is just like, there was a time when I would have listed BioWare as one of my like go-to never let me down companies. Yep. And, first off, I think clearly the corporate culture or just sort of the leadership of how the company functions
The doctors never would have let this happen.
Well, sounds like the doctors absolutely let this happen because they talked about that BioWare magic thing where everything in these projects would come together in the last few months. Like they compared it to a hockey stick, and like it just in the past it worked, and now it doesn't.
I was talking about like the indecision and all that kind of stuff that went on for years and years.
Well, I don't think Casey Hudson would have let that happen either, but he left, and then he came back, and then I guess sort of whipped something into shape. But like. Yeah, I mean, the lack of leadership doesn't just go down to the fact that Casey Hudson left the project. The lack of leadership goes down to like the doctors retired, and that's that took away. It kind of took away the soul of the company.
Absolutely,
in some ways.
that's what struck me the hardest was that BioWare Edmonton is not infallible.
Right.
I mean, because we were saying, okay, well, Andromeda was made by the B team, and this other game was worked on by this other team, but. Anthem.
Yeah.
And as you read the story, it is absolutely right. BioWare Edmonton ruled the development of this game with an iron fist. They would not take any outside opinions from anyone, even people who had built online games as a service before within the company.
Yeah, the fact that they didn't leverage BioWare Austin's experience and expertise on running
it's like they were so
a successful online game is
Yeah.
very strange.
To me, the whole BioWare mythos just died. Because if that's what's happening at the Edmonton studio, what about the others? I mean, that's supposed to be the mothership. Like you said, like the developer that you know when it puts out a game, you're going to love it and it's going to be rock solid. And now that reputation's in the
And
toilet.
of course, there's the usual Frostbite issues where they
you've been right about that all along. You've been talking about Frostbite for like 2 years on this show.
Yeah.
And I generally the stuff I play on Frostbite, sports games, shooters, it works fine. And so I was like, okay, maybe. But no, that was absolutely the root of all the evil.
It's been mentioned by everyone who's had trouble at EA in recent years. That and the fact that they mentioned like it's hard to get because a lot of the people that made BioWare what it was back in the day have moved on to other things, and they talk a little bit in the article about how it's hard to attract new talent because
nobody wants to live.
Nobody wants to live up in Edmonton. So I'm like, so really either way, Frostbite is the problem.
Yeah, that's freaking great.
But it's like
20 below zero in Edmonton.
Yeah. It's like.
It's so odd. I mean, it just kind of worked out that way because that's where the doctors were from.
Yeah.
And they just so happened to create this kick-ass development studio.
I remember going. I mean, I didn't go, but it was a shoot for I think the first Dragon Age, and Blair Herter went to. He was the talent for it with another producer, and it just happened to be the coldest day in Edmonton recorded.
I can't even imagine how cold that was.
And because it was a cold snap all over the northern, basically the whole North American continent was in a cold snap, and Edmonton was like
the worst.
It was ridiculous. And on the way back, they had a stopover in Vegas to fly back to LA, and they got stuck in Vegas because it was snowing in Vegas. They got snowed in Las Vegas. That's how cold it was that week.
That's nuts. I can't.
And that's the week they just happened to end up.
What was it like?
Edmonton.
60 below
Must
or something
have been.
there?
It was something like that.
No, I mean you can understand Look, when most of the industry is in California, how hard is it to recruit people to go work up? You'd have to pay people double their salaries. I mean, I'm sure part of their sell is the cost of living in Edmonton is like zero, which it is.
And if that's what you're into, that kind of life up there,
I mean,
great.
if you're a skier, snowboarder, or whatever, it's like heaven. But
I mean, it's also pretty isolated in general.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, even for Canada, which
you're on the run.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a good place.
Canada's gigantic. There's a lot of cities in Canada where they're just kind of plucked down, and then there's just nothing for a long distance around them, and that's the case with Edmonton. There's a reason why no one wants to live there. It's just not it's not really inhabitable for human beings.
You go outside at the wrong time of year and your eyeballs freeze.
Yeah, you could die, literally, pretty easily. When you think of where most development studios are, that is a tough sell.
Yeah, and like the draw of the sell was it's BioWare.
Right.
Come
here, work on a world-class...
Like I know several people, mostly mostly Ubisoft people that used to work there or have worked there, and like a lot of what they say is like, yeah, you went there to get it on your resume. Like you because having worked at BioWare was like, wow, like you worked at BioWare.
You had the BioWare magic.
Yeah, you did have the BioWare magic on your CV, and now it's like, oh, you worked on Andromeda, huh?
Yeah. Or
Yeah,
now
it's just
Anthem even.
Or Anthem, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's so weird to me about it. Yeah, the article doesn't really go into this too much, but like the thing that's so weird to me about like the Anthem, not the Anthem thing, but like EA's obsession with the games as a service thing. I realize it's a lucrative thing if you can get a hit off with it. But it's so weird to me that like EA wants this so for everything it makes and all when it's never done it successfully. You know, it's not like Ubisoft kind of like adjusting all in the wake of Assassin's Creed 2, adjusting most of their games to sort of be that open world template. It's not like Activision adjusting all its stuff to sort of follow the Call of Duty multiplayer idea right down to their licensed games at the time. EA doesn't have a template for this stuff.
Yeah.
Like EA can't point to anything it's made to its other developers and be like, make it like that.
No.
And then like you get the thing in Schreier's article about how nobody was allowed to mention Destiny. And
that was really
what are you
bizarre.
even looking at to like that's crazy.
That is
like,
crazy.
Not only do you not have a template in-house of what EA wants their games to be, but like internally at BioWare, they don't even want to look at like the kind of the king of that horrible little corner of gaming. It's, like at the very least, you have to look at the leader. Like it's like making a MMO in 2008 and not playing World of Warcraft.
It's also crazy to watch this E3 demo now, because this was a big part of the article, this demo in particular, because they had no game when they made the demo, and this is all fake.
Yeah, and the people back at BioWare were watching this during the press conference and be like, "Oh, I guess that's what we're making."
That's the game. Oh wow, we didn't realize it until now.
There was at least one of the people that Schreier had interviewed in that was saying like, "Oh, that's the first time we really understood what we were trying to do."
Yeah,
and I'm like, that should terrify that.
That's why I'm saying it's insane that it ended up being as good as it is.
Like, how in the world?
That just shows you what money can do. I mean, EA was basically like, you know what? We're going to pull everyone from all three of those studios and put them on this game.
That was just...
And they could basically make a game this good in a year. It's pretty nuts. Like, resources, man, it's everything. So what is BioWare now, Matt? Is it anything but just a logo?
I mean, for now, not really. I mean,
it's
it's
hard. It hurts my heart.
You're sort of waiting to see what Dragon Age 4 ends up being, which it sounds like we're going to be waiting a while. Like,
they scrapped that completely.
If they scrapped that and restarted in 2017, and now they're in this sort of place where they're not sure if what they do is even good enough, and like, are we looking at 4 or 5 year development cycle on this thing, which puts us in like 2022?
I mean, if you read that story, that's typical at EA. 4 or 5 years. That's just how long it's taken them to get stuff done. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be a PS5, Xbox 2 game, without a doubt. And it may come even like in year 2 of those platforms before it even shows up.
Because I feel like they can't. They've had their Andromeda issue, and then Anthem was what it was. And they have to return to form with Dragon Age, or like I don't know how you come back.
I don't know if there's a form anymore for BioWare. I really don't.
I think there is a form in the sense you go back to what worked. You go back to Mass Effect. You go back to the original Dragon Age template. You go back to KOTOR. God damn, let them make KOTOR 3 for God's sake.
Do you think that stuff will hold up now? I mean, better than this, obviously, but...
I mean, you'd need to, look, I know tons of people who are, BioWare fans, diehard BioWare fans. They love Dragon Age, they love Mass Effect, it's what they do. Like, one of my friends I met because I was wearing this N7 thing, and she reacted to it, and that's how I know her now, is from, her reaction to this at a game event.
Right.
But they all skipped Anthem. Because it doesn't do what a BioWare game is supposed to do to them. If you just give them a well-written story with characters that are memorable, because here's the other thing about Dragon Age Inquisition, I can't remember anyone in that fucking game.
It's not very memorable.
I was talking to someone who was talking about their favorite characters in that game, and they kept mentioning characters. I'm like, I have no idea who you're talking about. You're gonna have to physically describe them. Unless they were in previous, like Varric, I remember because he was in Dragon Age 2, and I remember him because I liked him. But they're talking about Sarah, and I'm like, I have no idea who Sarah is.
Yeah.
I played that game for 70 hours. I have no idea who any of these people are. Same thing with Mass Effect Andromeda. I finished Mass Effect Andromeda 100%. I couldn't name you a crew member. There's no PB. PB was the Asari girl. That's it. That's all I know. Because Mass Effect, I can recite you whole frickin' dialogue scenes, and it's like. The key is you got to make me like these characters. You got to make me interested in this world. You got to make me want to get sucked into this thing you're presenting to me. And BioWare games haven't done that for like 2 games now.
Yeah.
And like the problem is like to make a Dragon Age 4 that can do that, I don't think you can do that under the games as a service implementation.
Which is all EA wants to make if you read that story.
Apparently, yeah. So like you either give them the freedom to be themselves again and let them hire the talent to do that, or I don't know what you're like you said, I don't know what BioWare is then. And I don't even know why you still have them at that point.
I mean, after reading that story, who knows
still,
what's going to happen?
There's still room in the mass grave out back, I promise.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just like wherever every other company every other great company EA bought. And, I mean, BioWare's
sure
lasted
looks like
longer.
It's happening again.
BioWare's lasted longer than most. But
because of that logo.
Yeah,
ultimately.
but also because they made quality shit for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, Mass Effect was great.
I mean, honestly, Anthem sold really well.
Anthem sold enough to, like, make a profit, for sure.
And it's going to keep making a profit. I mean, it's already over that hump, and it's like now that all the games as a service stuff starts rolling out, all those microtransactions.
I mean, I know EA's got its message and its mission, and it's got to do what it's got to do to get its shareholders happy or whatever, but it's like, you look at the success of games like God of War and Spider-Man, and you're like, wouldn't it be okay if one of your developers made stuff like that once in a while?
And shouldn't BioWare be that one developer?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who had the pedigree to do that? Like,
yeah.
Shouldn't that be what you let them do?
What they
and
do
maybe
best.
Let them
why you bought them?
Right.
Why you own BioWare?
But that's the same thing EA does. All
this track
how
record
crazy is it that Pandemic doesn't exist?
I know, it's insane.
How crazy is it that the Saboteur did not make money, but instead of keeping that Pandemic team, which was a bunch of great guys and girls, like that was a Pandemic. We had a lot of contact with them because they were local. And like that was a great company.
Here's an anecdote.
But like
about
also
Pandemic.
like they make really good, interesting like open world stuff in a time when open world stuff was really blossoming in the wake of Assassin's Creed. And they make one thing that underperforms, and you take them out back and shoot them in the head.
That is a game, by the way, that you
throw them on top of Westwood and Orion.
I mean,
right?
They don't put out that game unless you say, yeah, we're down with that. Mm-hmm. So, man, you almost could not intentionally do what EA has done. It's really frustrating to watch. It's like, despite all...
And now we're not even getting into the Star Wars debacles.
I know. It's so funny to think about, EA was named like the least desirable company to work for years in a row. People have complained about EA is the whipping boy of the industry, and it still does the stuff that people hate them for. Mm-hmm. It doesn't learn. It's not like, hey, why are these people angry? Maybe we shouldn't do what they're angry over anymore. No, they just like double down.
Well, it's going to be real interesting to see this weekend when Jedi Fallen Order is revealed.
Yeah, don't forget that. This weekend,
Star Wars Celebration.
The new Star Wars game is being shown for the first time.
Because you're dealing with Respawn, run by Vince Zampella, who is something of a rebel, fittingly enough.
No, he is, absolutely.
And, he's the one who's willing to not take some. He's the one when Titanfall 2 got hammered by being released between Battlefield and Call of Duty, and they had that stage show or something. And Vince was there, and some EA exec guy said, on stage, like, we remain committed to the Titanfall brand or whatever. And Vince says, whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah.
Like on stage, like right there with the guy. It's just, he doesn't give a. And so Jedi Fallen.
When you have that kind of, he has don't give a fuck kind of money.
Well, also don't give a fuck kind of clout in terms of like.
Well, now with Apex Legends,
with Apex
and
for sure, Apex for sure, he's got that back.
Yeah.
I would say, and how much of it must Vince and just Respawn in general love the fact that they got to stick it back to Battlefield with their own Battle Royale game, and then Battlefield's Battle Royale mode came out, and it's like, oh, here we go. But, Jedi Fallen Order is using Unreal. It's not using Frostbite.
Yeah.
And part of that might be because they probably started development on that before they were owned by EA, so they didn't have to, fall in line the way you would if you were owned by the company. But I'm sure interested.
No, I think the better bet is they just don't.
That's also, I'm sure Vince just didn't want to subject his people to.
And he's the only one there who could say, no, we're not using that engine.
But I'm going to be real interested to see what this game looks like, and B, what you can do in it, and see how smoothly it goes to launch in comparison to all these other constant disasters of trying to make Frostbite make games that simply aren't designed to be made, because even Amy Hennig, who's a veteran to the point that I believe what she says when she's sitting there at DICE and says, brings up Frostbite as one of her biggest problems with that whole process of trying to make that Star Wars game, and talking about how it didn't have a system in place to have a character crawl over something or like pull themselves up a ledge or have a decent inventory system because they'd never needed that before. And like how they had to figure all that stuff out. Whereas like if
all for nothing.
For what?
For nothing.
Yeah. It's like, and
I'm interested to see if it's a game.
It was built to do a certain thing, and it does that thing well, which is run very quickly at a high frame rate for a first-person shooter.
Yeah.
And
it works for that genre.
For that, but it doesn't work for everything.
I mean, that article will shade how I look at EA forever. Mm-hmm. It's already changing how I am going to look at the debut of Vince's new game this weekend. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm already going to be like, is it a game as a service? If it's not, holy cow, he really put his foot down. Like, it changes everything.
I mean, part of it if it's also not a game as a service, part of it will be, it sounds like Vince, knew what he needed to make and put his foot down, whatever. But part of it is also going to be like, they need to get something out.
Yeah.
We need to make a game that people are not going to throw a fit over because we did something stupid on it, or we crammed horrible microtransaction ideas into it, or it. I also think I think Battlefront looks gorgeous. I think Battlefield looks gorgeous, and I think everything else that's ever run on the Frostbite engine all looks the same.
It does.
It all looks like this weird.
I mean, I would even argue that
shaded...
those two games look pretty similar.
Oh yeah.
I mean, obviously the art's different because
the art's different, but like
IPs,
the photo real aspect is there. But like you see, every other Frostbite game has this weird sort of like blandly. I mean, it's
kind
almost
of like the Unreal Engine back in the Xbox 360
like there's a quality,
there's a look to
there's
it.
a quality to it.
Yeah.
And like only DICE's games seem to avoid that somehow, and everyone else.
Because they made it.
Because they made it, right?
And they're not giving the secret sauce, even though they should be to everybody.
So yeah, I mean, I find the whole situation frustrating.
Very frustrating
from dual perspectives, in the sense of being a BioWare fan from way back, who BioWare's best games are some of my favorite games of all time. And you're not letting them do that anymore, and that annoys me. And then on the flip side, it's all part and parcel of the same problem of because one interesting thing about Schreier's article about Anthem was that it sounds like a lot more of the problems with Anthem were from BioWare than EA than we would have originally believed.
Yeah,
it sounds like BioWare hoisted themselves by their own petard fairly often on this project, and that EA, I mean, obviously EA's guidelines, quote unquote, don't help. But it sounds like the lack of leadership is sort of endemic to how that company's functioning right now, whether EA is making bad decisions or not. It's just EA's bad decisions are just enhancing the problem. And then on the other hand, as a giant Star Wars fan, like, where are my goddamn games?
Yeah.
Like, thank God for Vince Zampella about to deliver something.
Yeah.
It's like, really?
It's crazy.
To the point that Lucasfilm is recreating Lucasfilm games now.
This is worse than worst case scenario. When EA got the Star Wars license.
Yeah, I would never have believed.
Never. This is worse than I ever would have imagined.
That the only really unmitigated success is their mobile games.
Yeah.
Those make good. Galaxy of Heroes makes good money.
Yeah. I have buddies who play that game like religiously.
I played it for a bit, but I don't. It doesn't. I don't. The treadmill mobile games don't do anything for me.
Yeah.
It's just like I try to play them. I try to like them, but I just don't. I don't like that game. I don't like the generic fighting games. Even the Transformers one. I really try to like that one. I just
I
don't.
bet you did. I found that like a lot of my friends from my hometown back in central Pennsylvania that played games, they all now play mobile games. They don't own consoles. I think a couple of them actually have consoles, but man, they are all over mobile games. They love Clash of Clans, and they all have their clans, and like we'll be out like having drinks, and they'll start talking trash about their clans to each other. Like they're as into mobile gaming now is they were into console gaming back when I lived there. It's pretty crazy.
It's interesting. I have never really played a mobile game that I felt outside of like Monument Valley. I mean, there's a few, there's a handful, like 5 or 6, but the majority, especially the ones that follow that there's the fighting game template. There's the turn-based RPG template like Galaxy of Heroes. There's even Ninja Turtles has one of those.
I know.
There's the Clash of Clans template, which is like I have a Transformers Earth Wars game that does the same thing. Yeah. Like there's the 3 or 4 base. There's the Match 3 Puzzle Quest version. There's like 4 like kind of templates that each of these things follow. and I don't find any of them fun.
I don't either.
And even the ones that I find fun when they're a normal video game, like I like Puzzle Quest. I like that Match 3 do RPG stuff thing. But when you apply that sort of like, giant fill the bar treadmill, wait 10 minutes to fill your energy, like once you stick those things on it, I don't find it fun anymore.
Yeah, my friends are all over them, man. It's shocking to me. Like I said, they're as into it as they were into regular games back in the day.
Like, I mean, I guess if you just want something to like pull up, open, dip into when you're waiting in line at Applebee's or something, like
that's what they do. I mean, they dip into it all the time.
Yeah.
Like you're having a conversation with them, and they'll start checking like the leaderboards or whatever. Like
I guess that's my problem. Is like I try to sit down and play these like video games, and like the idea is like the way people who are really into them play them. They don't play them for long enough at bursts at a time to run out of energy.
Yeah.
Like I play until I can't play anymore because I'm out of energy and I don't want to pay money to refill it, so I just stop playing.
No, you're right. They'll play it for that 15
little,
minutes here,
bit.
20 minutes here, 5 minutes there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what they like about it. I think they like that they can.
I think that's definitely the appeal.
Yeah.
It's just not why I play video games.
Not for me either. So
also, like when you can see the strings. It's annoying.
They can't see them though, because they don't have the vision that we have to look at games that way. They're just like, it's a Star Wars RPG and it's free, and all my friends are playing it, and that's really all I care about. Like they spend money, they spend real money on these games.
I mean, I'm honestly like jealous of them.
I know it's
like it sounds cool. I wish I liked these.
They're
games
loving
more.
it. Like it's funny. Like they talk about Clash of Clans like we used to talk about like Halo back when. Like they love it, and I don't begrudge
I wish
them.
I could get in like the Galaxy Heroes thing, like collect all those characters and like do
that's
that.
how I view it too. I don't hate on them for it. I'm just glad you guys are still playing games, Like I really thought that by now none of them would. So what I worked on way back when, it worked, but it didn't pay off the way I hoped it would. But I'm just glad to see them still playing games and talking about games. And they'll ask me, like, well, what's the big stuff on console, and why should I play that instead of this? And it's interesting. I mean, not everyone who plays mobile games are people who just started playing games last year.
No.
There are people who were like us a long time ago who have kind of shifted over to that. And I think that's something...
And the convenience of it is more important than...
And I think that's why games as a service is like a big thing at EA, because EA makes a lot of money off its mobile stuff. It's had a couple rough quarters here, but it makes most of its money on mobile. So it's like, wait a minute, if we can generate this much revenue off of mobile, why can't we use the same strategies behind that in our console stuff?
And the answer inevitably is because you're charging me $60 for it, asshole.
And but like, some of the practices are just scummy. I mean...
Sure. I mean, like, we saw that with Battlefront 2. Like, they pushed it too far. Bob Iger, the head of Disney, had to give him a phone call and be like, what are you doing to our brand?
Yeah, what's going on?
Which, by the way, that was stunning. Like, the fact that I mean...
Took the time to even
comment. The head... No, also because, like, Lucasfilm is in charge of Star Wars. Everyone goes on about, the Disney Star Wars, Disney era of Star Wars. Lucasfilm has complete creative control over Star Wars. And most of the people working at Lucasfilm in... the leadership capacity are the same people that were there before they were sold
when
to
it was
Disney.
LucasArts.
It's all the same people.
Yeah.
So it's not Disney did not hand down mandates of what Star Wars needs to be. So I would have expected, knowing that about Lucasfilm, that the head of Lucasfilm, like Kathleen Kennedy, might call EA and be like, hey, the fact that Bob Iger, because Disney's interest in Star Wars is obviously as a money maker. But Disney's thing is Disney is the distributor of the Star Wars movies. They're the one thing they can decide is when they come out, like the release dates, marketing, et cetera, et cetera. So the fact that Iger, the head of Disney, is the one who called EA, that means that they thought not just Lucasfilm was like, why are you messing with our creative stuff and our license and our IP? That meant Disney, as a company that makes literal billions off of Star Wars as a thing they own in that capacity of Lucasfilm, was like, this is threatening this thing, and we need to step in. That is astounding. If I were EA,
it's not that astounding though, because EA has dropped the ball.
Right, but it's astounding in the sense that EA could drop the ball so hard that the head of Disney, not just the head of Lucasfilm, the head of Disney has to step in and be like, yo. Like,
we're starting to notice now.
Like, the fact that people at EA didn't lose some jobs over that in a high-level position sense
maybe they did.
Is a little... I mean, maybe it did. We don't follow every single executive shakeup over at EA. But, like, at the very least, if I was a high-ranking person at EA, I would be terrified of that forever.
I mean, doesn't it sound...
That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That shit doesn't happen.
I mean, doesn't it
at
sound
that high
like
level.
There needs to be a cleaning out of EA in general? I mean,
maybe. I mean,
reading that story about BioWare, like, I
my
have
question,
no faith in that company as an organization.
I mean, my question becomes like, what do the shareholders think? Because that's the only place change comes from.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if the shareholders, if the people who are on the board, like, read these articles and look at this stuff and be like, is this really how it is? Like, if this is how it is, like, even if you're making money, you're like, we could probably be making more money if we just made stuff that was good. Because
funny how that works.
Because hey, you know what? You can make money off of terrible things that you've just sort of marketed and convinced people that it's the new hotness. I mean, that's Michael Bay did that with 5 Transformers.
They did that with Anthem.
Right, they did that with Anthem.
Yeah.
That's true. But you know what happens when you make something that's really good for a long time that people love and can't get enough of and want to like have as part of their entertainment over and over and over again? You get Avengers Endgame.
Yeah. You also get...
And Endgame's about to make $800 million in an opening weekend and has a shot at dethroning Avatar. And the reason isn't because that Marvel or Disney hyped it up. The reason is because they've made movies people like for 11 years.
What you also
So make
get,
games people like,
right,
and you will make money off of it.
Because what you get from that in games is you get a developer like BioWare that can make
can make those games.
That can make great games, but also has the equity built up with fans where it can make a couple crappy games and people don't bail. Like,
and now you're kind of at that point.
Yeah. Like, you're at the bail point now.
Yeah, you are, for sure. And there's the other frustrating thing about that article was like where they bring it up, some of the BioWare people, anonymously, they're like, yeah, we pitched KOTOR 3.
Yeah.
We've tried a couple, and like EA's, it's like, no, you, I will hurt you. Like, if you have prevented me, if you killed KOTOR, I mean, better that than like giving KOTOR 3 to like the guys who made Andromeda, but like let BioWare do what BioWare does. It's like
I don't think we'll ever see another Mass Effect game.
I'm fine with that.
Like, I don't think we'll ever see another one. Yeah.
Leave it alone. Like, clearly, I mean, the story's over. The story was told.
Yeah.
I would like to see a remaster.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a trilogy remaster.
Particularly the first one.
I would like to see the first one's gameplay brought more in line with what 2 and 3 were.
Yep.
I know there's a contingent that thinks Mass Effect 1's gameplay is the best, but they're wrong. I've played that game 5 times, and like, no, it's not really very good. It's very rudimentary Unreal 3 early days stuff, or maybe it was 2.5. I don't remember what version of Unreal it used. But 2 was a quantum leap in how that game functioned in terms of the gameplay. And I would love to see Mass Effect 1 brought into that sort of realm in a full remake, remaster sense. I feel like we're never going to get that.
Probably
because
not.
EA has no interest in that.
Might farm it out to someone else.
Even Activision recognizes the value of the remaster of something that people desperately want on the back of what Crash Bandicoot sold. Yeah. Like the whole thing that EA, the problem with EA seems to be that they are in this mentality, which is very true in this sort of era of infinite growth tech sector stuff, where everything has to be the maximum possible. It's like, it's okay to just put out like a thing that does well.
No, not with not stockholders. That's what drives everything. It ruins everything.
Well, because it
really does.
Well,
the stock market ruins everything.
If they were smart enough or successful enough to kind of put out some games as a service games that did work on a level of Destiny, were as successful as Destiny, they could then let BioWare make stuff like that as a supplement. But now it feels like EA is constantly flailing around looking for the next pillar.
Yeah.
Like what do they do? What do they put out now?
That's what I was just going to finish this discussion on. Like, what happens with BioWare? I mean they're going to finish out their run with. I
mean, no wonder there's no EA press conference this year.
Yeah, I mean they're going to finish their run with Anthem, and then we probably won't hear from them again for like 3 or 4 years until they're ready to show Dragon Age.
Yeah.
If they even let them finish Dragon Age. So the whole thing just sucks all the way around. Once again, great reporting by Jason Schreier.
Yeah.
Another great story by him.
And the one today is really good on Dragon Age 4 specifically.
Yeah, and that should be up on the site. But it's a shame. It hurts to see BioWare in the shape that it's in.
But it's also it's just par for the course. It's like almost like there's a whole litany of my favorite developers of all time who have been consumed and then murdered by EA.
Yeah.
It happened to Bullfrog. It happened to Westwood. It happened to Maxis.
Oh, you can go on.
It happened to Pandemic.
Yeah.
It happened to Orion. Was it Orion? Yeah, Orion Worlds. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Ultima and Wing Commander.
Yep.
And they've got tons of my favorite IPs hostage in their vault. We're never gonna see it again. We're never gonna see another Starflight. We're never gonna see another Wing Commander. We're never gonna see another anything. It's just on and on and on and on, and like it's a shame and it sucks, and it makes me sad and confused and angry. And
I concur.
Which makes it kind of sound like I work at BioWare.
You're right.
Judging by that article.
Yeah, you're right. All right, we're going to move on. Next, we're going to talk about...
Save us, Vince.
Yeah,
Save us, Jedi Fallen
I don't
Order.
think he can save BioWare, though.
No, but he can at least give me a Star Wars game that doesn't make me annoyed when I walk away from it.
Yeah, again, that's debuted this weekend. We'll have it up on Sifted, so make sure you check back. Next up, we're going to talk about the Nintendo tax. I don't know if we've ever really talked about it on GameFace.
It's come up in
maybe
passing.
in passing.
I don't think it's been an actual subject.
Yeah, this week I think it's kind of been brought to the forefront because it was revealed that Bethesda's game, upcoming game Wolfenstein Youngblood, is not going to be sold on a cartridge.
Right.
So if you can go to retail and you can buy it, but
it's an empty box.
It's
with
a
code
case with a code inside it.
Mm-hmm.
And Bethesda has said this is because it costs so much to use a cart for any of our games on the Switch.
Especially like the higher capacity the cart is, the more the cart costs, and I think
which has always been that way.
I think this game is something like 26 gigabytes on Switch or something like that. 20 is somewhere in there, which is pretty big for a Switch game.
And Youngblood isn't the only game that's doing this. Resident Evil Origins Collection. Mm-hmm. It's also going to be only a code.
Yeah, and
there was one other one.
They've done a few where like the Spyro collection was like the first game was on the cartridge, but the other two you had to download.
Yeah.
The size of the cartridge affects the cost of the cart for the publisher significantly. So that's why you see that.
So would you rather pay the $10, the extra $10, and get a... I mean, you're kind of all digital at this point.
Mostly,
so maybe I should ask myself this question. If I'm willing to pay an extra $10 to get a physical copy of something.
To get what, though? There is no physical copy. You just get it.
No, I'm saying, would I be willing to pay an extra $10 for a card, a cart?
So it would be $70.
Right.
Yeah.
And would I? For some games, I think I would. Like, look, if
But for this, when you could pay $60 and get it on a disc on any other platform,
I know,
and it would look better and run better,
I know.
Like that's why this is happening. I mean,
if
it was a Switch exclusive, it might not be that cut and dried. But like, you can't charge an extra $10 for an inferior version of something. I'm sorry to call it that, but that is what it is.
And the other problem too is that Nintendo doesn't really suffer from these problems because it's pretty crazy how small the file sizes are for Nintendo games.
It really is.
I mean, they're like a couple gigs. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it is because their games aren't really cinematic. So they're not holding a lot of low compression FMV
also,
footage.
they know from the outset that this thing's going to have to fit on one of these cards.
Yeah,
you know?
And so they build the game from the outset to fit.
Whereas, like, that's not really a priority in most multi-platform development anymore. The idea that you have to fit...
It's not at all. It's definitely not a priority at all.
I mean, look at Red Dead Redemption. Like, they don't care how much space they take up on that hard drive.
It was 100 gigs like 2 weeks after it launched. Yeah, I mean, it's just not even a concern.
No, because hard drive space is cheap.
Yeah, but the way Nintendo does things. So how do you think this is going to affect Nintendo in the long run?
I mean, I don't think it's going to affect that much in general. I mean, the devotees are going to devotee. You know, it's. I don't think it's going to affect anything, really.
What about...
It would affect a lot more if they started charging $10 more for things.
Yeah.
Which I know they do on some stuff, but
I mean, some of the games already that
but bumping up to $70 for like mainstream releases, like that's a non-starter. So I think this is probably the preferable solution. People are going to gripe about it, but if you want it on the Switch, that's what you got to do.
Do you think this is a first step towards something?
Something what?
Like meaning that physical games may be just something that's going to be a part of the past?
Well, no. I mean, eventually they probably will be, but like. The game's still coming out on Blu-ray, you know. Like, the problem is not the physical copy is a problem. The problem is that Nintendo's choice of medium is an extra expense that does not fit into their budget.
Yeah.
Like, that's the problem. It has nothing to do with, like, oh, we don't want to put stuff on physical media anymore. It's just like, no, we...
Right, but because of that, do you think that could create momentum towards that direction?
No. The thing that's going to create momentum in that direction is the disappearance of the brick and mortar market. Like, this isn't related to that. This is related to the cost of doing business with Nintendo.
Yeah. If you're a Switch-only owner, how do you take this information?
Well, I mean, if I was a Switch-only owner and I wanted Wolfenstein, I'd just buy it digitally. Because what's the difference?
I would argue that
Unless
Nintendo
you could get a good
fans
deal.
are bigger collectors than fans of other platforms. Would you agree with that?
I mean, yeah, I think that's true for the most part. But I think that is largely confined to Nintendo's own output. There are people who want like every game released on each Nintendo platform, and so in that case, I guess you do want the empty box of Wolfenstein Youngblood on your shelf, even if there's no card in it.
Yeah. But
I mean, it's weird, but it's like it's not like it's unprecedented. Like, a bunch of collector's editions don't come with games anymore. We don't come with physical copies of the games anymore.
I can't remember a triple I game that doesn't.
Halo 5, one of the super duper collector's edition of the
I
last
remember
Halo
that.
game.
But people freaked out about that.
They didn't like it, no.
Yeah.
But
Which they should have freaked out. They're paying more money and they're not getting the disc of the game, which that's just still boggles my mind.
same with what was it? Mass Effect Andromeda. You could get like the collector's edition that had the remote controlled like dune buggy or whatever that was, but it didn't have the game.
It's so weird.
And their excuse for that is like, well, people buy the game in so many different ways. Some people prefer a disc, some people prefer digital. We don't want to make that decision for them, so it's just an extra. So basically, it's merchandise. It's not the game.
It's really not the game. Yeah.
Like, if you don't include the game, it's just a toy that's happened to be licensed from the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
At that point, you're the cardboard model of the Starlink starship that you could buy at the bottom of the shelf there.
Do you think something like this could convince Switch owners to buy another platform?
No, I don't think Wolfenstein is. I mean, you do that with Zelda maybe, but then you're stuck on Nintendo anyway. It's like, if you don't have another game system at this point in the generation and you're only on the Switch, you're probably not prioritizing other companies' games to the point that you would want to do that. Like, you're just going to deal with it. I mean, who's that dedicated to physical media that they would buy they'd buy a $400 console rather than just skip Wolfenstein Youngblood?
Yeah.
Like, it's silly, but it's sort of the situation you're in when you're still using,
cartridges in 2019.
But like, if it's going to be a handheld system, what option do you have?
Yeah. I mean, the disc hasn't really worked.
No, we already lived through the PSP. It was not. It was not a wonderful experience.
No, it definitely wasn't. So you don't think? So I guess what we're saying is the Nintendo tax doesn't matter.
Doesn't seem to.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems kind of irrelevant.
If it did, I don't think the Switch would be as successful as it is.
Isn't it funny though how much of a big deal has been made about it? Why do you think that is?
I don't know how big a deal has been made out of it.
I mean, it's a thing. I mean, it's been coined the Nintendo tax.
Right, but it's like, it seems kind of be like a tongue-in-cheek sort of like, well, that's how it is,
Yeah.
Like, it's not like it doesn't set Twitter on fire like the frickin' easy mode argument this week. It's like, it's like that's a thing that has a lot more bile behind it than like the fact that Nintendo wants to charge $10 extra on things or doesn't want to give you a cartridge in the box. Like, you think that would be a bigger issue in terms of consumer fairness than like
I don't think
an easy mode in Sekiro.
But that's because when you start talking about the easy mode stuff, you're starting to talk about people's egos and their identities, and that's when people get psycho.
Well, Nintendo's an identity for a lot of people.
It is, absolutely.
Which is probably why they don't mind dealing with whatever shortcomings they have to deal with to still maintain that identity.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're a Nintendo fan and this is what you got to put up with to have a successful Nintendo system, cool. You know? Like, maybe if the Switch wasn't successful, if the Switch was another Wii U, there would be more outcry from the fandom over it because they could like point to that as one of the reasons that it's not being successful. But it is successful. It's doing extremely well. So, like, if you want that thing on Switch, there you go. If you don't like that, buy it on literally any other platform.
Yeah. Here's actually maybe the best question related to this topic is it a smart move for Bethesda?
I don't think Bethesda has a choice.
Well, I mean, it could. I mean, that's my question, though. not creating a physical version of the game, will it turn more people away than charging us an extra $10 for a physical version would? You're always going to be able to buy the digital version on the eShop. Mm-hmm. It's always going to be there. And if you can buy that still for $59.99 or whatever, and then you offer the retail version for an extra $10, which is better for Bethesda financially?
I think it's going to be offering the empty box for the same price as the other versions, because otherwise, Rick, why is the Switch version $70 and the PS4 and Xbox versions are $60? And then on top of that, like, the whole point of putting out the physical box with the code in it is just to be on store shelves.
Right.
It's just to be there
in retail. Yeah.
So when people see this thing, they can see it on the shelf. It's Black Friday. We need something for Bobby, for our 12-year-old Bobby, and we're going to buy him the M-rated Nazi murder simulator. That's the other thing. Is like, maybe Bethesda just isn't expecting
much sales.
A tremendous, tremendous slice of the pie of Wolfenstein Youngblood to be from the Switch. They have put out.
It would know.
It would know.
It would know. Yeah.
And if they really wanted to cut a deal with Nintendo on this, I bet they could, because they do have a good relationship with them. I guarantee you there was some sort of dealing between them to put out the other games they put out on the Switch, especially Skyrim, especially because they had Nintendo tie-in material in that game. If they wanted to figure that out, Nintendo probably could cut them a deal, but clearly somewhere in there it's not worth the effort.
Yeah.
It'd probably be different if Wolfenstein was a Switch exclusive.
Oh, yeah, obviously, it'd be a big.
But it isn't. So just this is the easy path. So just do that. Easy mode. Once again,
it's so weird buying a box that just has a piece of paper inside.
I mean, yeah, I think that's weird. I mean, why would I do that? Just to,
instead of just going on the eShop and buying it. I guess you get that box to put on your.
Well, yeah,
shelf.
I mean, it's two things. I mean, collectors prefer to have the box if the box. I mean, the box exists, so it's part of the collection now. And then, I think it really is. You're still not quite at the point where you can disregard brick and mortar stuff in big box stores, and you have to have that game box on the shelf. Because the other thing is, of course, there's going to be that game box on the shelf for the other two systems.
Right.
And if someone's only a Switch.
FOMO.
Yeah, if someone's only a Switch owner. You're really looking at holiday sales for this thing, is what that is. You need to have that there for the impulse buy and for the gift buy. And you want to cover all three systems. You don't want to have that kind of you don't want mom to go in and be like, why is the Switch one $10 more? Why don't you just get it for this thing?
Yeah.
So instead you just do it this way, and it's the closest thing to a decent solution you have, I guess. If you have another one of the systems, you have a physical media solution right there, and it's gonna run and look better anyway. So, like, I think it's such a weird edge case with this particular game.
What's weird is Nintendo going back to cartridges after using optical discs for like two generations.
That's not weird at all, considering what the Switch is. Like, what else are they gonna do? Use fucking USP or what was the PSP thing?
UMDs.
UMDs. What are you gonna do that? That's lame. Like, it's the nature of the beast. But like the fact that it has that it's not a pure handheld and it goes, console to handheld, you're sort of, you end up comparing it to the console, especially since it's the sole pillar right now, and the 3DS has basically been phased down.
Phased out.
Yeah, like you're going to get that comparison, but like, what choice do you have for this thing that's being dragged around and played and bounced around in cars and on the train? Like, there's no alternative to that.
Yeah, I mean, the real issue I had with the UMDs was just the battery life in the PSP.
I mean, that doesn't help.
That
I mean, the battery life. To be fair, the battery life on the Switch is bad enough as it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's already like 3 hours. Like,
yeah.
You put a.
It would last like 45
Yeah,
minutes.
you put a freaking lens motor in there, and how long is that?
Yeah.
But I think for durability and portability functionality, like, I think using cards is fine. But the problem is, like, you've sort of forced yourself into this box where you have this audience that you have that wants these multi-platform games, that wants to be able to feel like they've got a console and not just a handheld. And you've got this relationship with Bethesda, which one of the few multi-platform game makers putting current gen stuff on the Switch.
Platform, yeah. You would think if you were Nintendo, you might just cut them a break.
You'd think.
I mean,
I don't know what the politics of that are.
That's really probably what should have happened. Nintendo probably should have been like, you've been a good partner. You put out Doom. You're putting out Wolfenstein. You're going to put out
here.
The next Doom. You're still making games for us.
Yeah, because Ubisoft used to be that, and where's the Division 2 on the Switch?
But Nintendo will never do that.
But it's just not in Nintendo's DNA.
It's just too cutthroat. So, yeah, I guess so. At the end of the discussion, what we've come to the conclusion of is the Nintendo tax doesn't matter.
I don't see how it would. I mean, if it did, I don't think the Switch would be where it is right now.
And Do we think Nintendo will have carts on its next platform?
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, keep on keeping on. I mean, if this is what the niche they've carved out for themselves, why rock the boat?
Yeah.
I mean, that's, they could surprise me, but I feel like this is what they're going to do.
Ultimately, as you said, they're a huge success. And so a lot of times when you're really
and don't
successful,
forget,
it's hard
even if they do go with cartridges again, some upgraded version of whatever the carts they're using for this thing are.
I mean, they're SD cards. That's really all they
but
are.
even if you go to the next, go to the next generation, they put out the next iteration of the Switch, and you've got all of this generation to port.
That's true.
To that new system.
That's true.
And sell to, because you want to talk about the Nintendo tax. The Nintendo tax is having to buy all your last gen games again on the Switch, so you can play them on the frickin' train.
Or the virtual console tax.
Judging by the discussion over where and when you use the Switch in terms of rebuying a game or double or triple dipping on things, a lot more people are taking trains than the actual statistics show. Train riding in the U.S.
I see.
Like Amtrak would be a lot more successful if as many people were actually playing Switches on trains as they claim to be.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Buses, okay, but I don't know.
Yep.
I come from San Francisco, and I would not bring high-tech hardware on a Muni bus.
No, definitely not. Someone would puke all over it or something. Or just try to shoot it up with heroin. Yeah, like jab a needle into the screen.
Like you just don't know what you're going to run into on Muni.
Definitely not. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about Borderlands 3. We talked about it last week. It had basically just been announced. The only information we had was what was in the trailer for the game. Over the course of the past 7 days, a lot more information has come out. We want to share that with you guys and discuss it. So, are you more excited for Borderlands 3 a week after its announcement, or were you more excited when you just saw the trailer?
I wouldn't describe my feelings towards Borderlands 3 as excitement. Just sort of, yeah. It's Borderlands. I've played it 3 times, for God's sake. And here this thing comes, and I'm sure it'll be fine. And I will play it in September. Cool. I do like the look of the new Vault Hunters.
Billion guns this time.
Yeah, I hope I get one of the 50,000 that are actually useful.
There was, 8 million in the last one?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
I can't remember the names of the new Vault Hunters, but the one girl who's with the whole soldier. I played Axton and what's-his-face, the other soldier guy in the other two. They're my favorites, so I'm probably going to play another soldier character. And look, I don't know what their special ability is going to be, but throwing that turret down was like the lifesaver so often that it's hard for me to give up the turret.
I love turrets. I love being able to use turrets in any game with combat. It's my favorite thing to use. So let's start running down some of this stuff.
On the far left, actually, that's
she's my
favorite. Yeah, I can't remember her name. I think it begins with an A, like a Mara or something like that.
Let's start talking about some of the stuff that's come out over the last week. Split screen co-op, which is something that you don't get in any games ever anymore, it seems, unless they're indie games. It's very hard to find a AAA game with split screen in it anymore.
I like that that's become so ubiquitous that Sterling doesn't even do it anymore at the time. It's like AAA. He's like, I'm not going to go. Although he's had bronchitis for a couple weeks, so that might be part of it.
We'll pick up the mantle for him. So split screen co-op, and they put out a trailer yesterday and then pulled it. We have it on Sifted if you want to see it. I guess they mistakenly put it out before they were supposed to. Mm-hmm. Everyone gets loot in co-op. You don't have to compete for the loot.
That's good.
That is the biggest change of all. That to me was one of the most annoying parts of playing Borderlands. It's like it invalidated my play. It made me feel like I was wasting my time. I mean, obviously you get something out of helping somebody else, but when you have nothing to show for your time but a pat on the back and a virtual one at that, I don't know. It made it hard.
I mean, a lot of loot games have been doing that for a while now, so it makes sense that you'd bring that into Borderlands. I'm just glad they were aware enough to know that that's what you got to do now.
If you were worried that it may turn into a game as a service, you should remain worried because it absolutely is turning into a game as a service.
I mean, I think with whatever that whole key thing was with Borderlands 2, like you could clearly see that warming up.
Yeah.
the fact that it's so based around loot and getting random, a billion guns or whatever, like you're begging for loot crates.
I mean, it was kind of the original game as a service if you really think about it.
I mean, in the sense that you had to follow Randy on Twitter and get those codes and put them in, and do you want to use it? Yeah. Although there was a way to cheat that.
There was, yeah. They've already announced 4 story DLC packs. Mm-hmm. And that just gets them through the first year, basically.
I mean, they've always been pretty big on that in this series. Like, major stories, at least for Borderlands 2, had a lot of big story DLC. And they were mostly good. Like the one thing about the DLC packs on this that I think they have in their favor, in terms of kind of like player expectations and player opinion, is like they've pretty much come through on their DLC story stuff in the past on this series.
Yeah.
Like they were some of that stuff was some of the best stuff in those games. So and they do let kind of the writers and the designers on those DLC packs go a little crazy, even in a game as crazy as Borderlands.
Yeah.
Like some of the stuff in Borderlands 2
That's the best part about
nuts.
DLC to me.
And a
lot of times they just let the rules
nuts.
go out the window. They're
Yeah.
like, we wouldn't do this in the base campaign, but here, why not?
Why not have one of them just be a giant D&D story with Tiny Tina and let Ashley Birch go crazy with the character and do that? Like, great. I mean, I know there's people that hate that character, but it's like, the fact that they were willing to sort of commit to that, I think, is great. So, I don't have any real trepidation about that. I mean, my concern is more like, what is the moment-to-moment, day-to-day games as a service hooks going to look like in this game, and will it ruin my ability to play the game like a normal frickin' video game? That's always the concern with that sort of thing. I would argue that Anthem did not have that. Anthem did not ruin that. Anthem ruined itself through
Other ways.
very different means.
It tried real hard. So the 4 story DLC packs come as a part of the season pass. Or you can buy them a la carte. You can buy each DLC pack a la carte.
Standard old school expansion style.
You can also buy the season pass separately. So if you buy the base version of the game and you decide you want the season pass, you can tack that on.
Although I feel like this game, of all games, whether you want more of it.
You do.
it's
before you even play it, you know.
You're already there.
It's coming in 4 different versions.
Yeah.
There's the regular version, there's an $80 version, there's like a $150 version, then there's like a $250 version.
Which is like the full, comes with an actual treasure chest thing.
Yeah. It comes with an actual loot box.
I have Borderlands. I have the Borderlands 2 version of that. I never opened it.
You never opened it?
No. It got sent to us and nobody wanted it. There was a point at which people just stopped wanting the big, the weird,
collector's
the
editions,
big swag stuff.
Yeah.
Like no one wanted the giant life-size chain sword from Space Marine. Nobody wanted. And so you looked for the sucker who would take it, or the Black Ops
the
drone thing and all
car.
that. Yeah, no one wanted. I was like, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Cool.
But then you take it.
It just sits there and you do nothing
then you
with
regret it. My closets are full of stuff where I was like, oh, nobody else wants this? Well, I'll take it.
And 9 times out of 10, nobody else wants. It doesn't become valuable or anything.
No, it never does. It's just junk.
They're mass-produced crap.
Yeah, it's just junk that nobody ultimately ever even wants. You get it. You're like, oh, this is cool. And then that's it.
And that's it. Yeah.
That's it. 4-tier release.
You're like a 10-year-old opening a pack of socks on Christmas morning. It's just like, yep, cool.
Yeah, no matter how rich or poor you are, you will be able to find a way to spend extra money on Borderlands 3 with this 4-tiered packaging. And then the final detail that came out this week, and the one that has drawn the most ire and attention, Borderlands 3 is an Epic Game Store exclusive.
Dun, dun,
dun!
Yeah.
I saw there are some people flipping out about this on Sifted the last couple days. There was and oddly enough, the story that spurred the conversation was a story about all the Borderlands fans going to Steam and review bombing all the old Borderlands games. And then to Valve's credit, I will say I am impressed. Valve fixed it and removed all that stuff because, I mean, basically what those people are...
Whoever that guy is at Valve came in that week, I guess.
Yeah, apparently. But, I mean, if you think about it...
Sometimes that dude is fishing for months.
Yeah.
At a time.
It's pretty admirable, though, that Valve did that because these people are essentially like saying, we like you, Valve, and we want to show these guys that they shouldn't take this game off your service and we're going to review bomb it. And Valve, knowing already that these people are actually trying to get its back, still said, no, the right thing to do is to get rid of all these fake reviews. And so I admire Valve for doing that. But at the same time, people review bombing stuff, it's turned into this like knee-jerk reaction thing. It's like, oh, someone did something I don't like. Oh, let's go review bomb it. Like, it's just a part and parcel of internet outrage culture that seems to have taken everything over in the last couple of years online. But how are you feeling about it now? As the games keep stacking up, how are you feeling about Epic Game Store? You still okay with it?
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't either.
Like,
Doesn't matter. I mean, I wish there was.
Look, I don't have an Epic account. I don't either.
Actually.
I haven't bought anything on Epic Game Store.
Neither.
But when the time comes, when something I want is exclusive to it, then I will make the account,
I have no problem
and I will have another shortcut on my desktop, and that will be the end of it.
I do wish that there was just a way to buy PC games digitally, where you just get the file, and then and a key, and you can just install it wherever you want, whenever you want.
Like maybe it could come, I don't know, like on like a disc.
Yeah, and like have a box.
In a box. Yeah, I don't know.
But isn't it crazy, though, that you can't, like, if you buy a PC game, is there any way to buy PC games anymore where you just get the code and a key and you just own it?
Not typically, no.
I mean, that's crazy to think about.
I mean, you can get, like Humble Bundle. I mean, like, stuff, like Humble gives you a key to Steam, but sometimes you can get them where it's just, like, you just download it. Or, like, GOG does that. You download the thing entirely on its own.
Yeah, GOG is kind of the only...
GOG has no DRM, so basically you just get the file. I mean, it's how it is.
It's crazy. I think it is.
I don't think it is.
No?
I mean, it's just
you never feel like you own anything, because if these services ever go away or they have some kind of a technical issue, you don't have access to your game. Like,
I have access to my games, anything that's installed.
Right.
And I'm sure Steam's not going to go away overnight.
I don't think it's ever going to go away.
I don't think it will either. But like, if something was going to happen to Steam, we would know in advance enough that it's like, okay, install all your shit. Like, download everything and install everything and done. Or like they'd find a way to like, okay, we're shutting the store down, but you'll still be able to go on and download. So I mean, that stuff lasts a long time. It's not that expensive to keep that running for long enough for literal years.
Never going away.
Literal years for people to download other stuff. So on one hand, I understand kind of but that's not an argument I see against Epic Store. It's the idea that the Epic Store would one day go away and all your stuff would vanish. The problem seems to be that either A, people don't understand what competition means. Guess what? Spending money to like make your product more attractive by getting exclusive things or whatever. That's the definition of competition.
Yes, that's hashtag capitalism.
Yeah, welcome to the fucking game, folks. How do you think Sony got the PlayStation off the ground? How do you think Microsoft got the Xbox off? They paid for exclusives.
Where do you think the phrase money hat comes from?
Right.
That's what it is.
People don't use that anymore.
No,
really.
that went away.
I haven't heard money hat in a long time.
I just pulled it out of the depths of my mind. Yeah, remember money hats? That was like a big thing for a long time.
Penny, I never thought that would not be the lasting thing from Penny Arcade, and Bullshot would be.
Yeah.
But you like my hat? It's made of money.
Money hat.
That was made in reference to, I think it was Lorne Lanning putting the Abe's Odyssey or the Oddworld game as a launch exclusive for the original Xbox.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and money hats died before the Xbox 360 era, I believe. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, it wasn't like a huge thing.
It only lasted through like the GameCube, PS2.
Well, because it's mostly useful if you're trying to launch a new system into a new platform into an established space, which is exactly how Sony did it with the PlayStation 1. Why do you think Final Fantasy VII was on there?
It's been going on for forever.
Right.
It's just the way business works. You're trying to incentivize people to use your service. It's simple economics.
And like at least with the Epic Store, most of it's timed.
Right.
It will be on Steam. It sucks you got to wait a year if you really are that dead set against the Epic Store, but you will be able to get it on Steam eventually and give Steam their 30% cut instead of Epic their 12% cut.
And you should also say, and take away 12% from the people who made the game.
Right.
I think that, to me, is the big sticking point, and I think that's what people should narrow in on. It's not so much about the publisher, it's the money that gets passed on to the developer. And it may not be a big deal for a game like Borderlands 3. You may not care because, truth be told, 2K is going to make most of that extra money and not Gearbox.
Well, the other thing,
but the indie guys, it's the really big deal. They're already on like a
there's two separate things there where
profit margin.
Where the indie guys are into it because of the lower cut that Epic takes. The reason like people like say EA or 2K, I mean, EA is all wrapped up in Origin, but like the reason like 2K is okay with that because, and here's the dirty little secret. PC games don't sell that much.
Yeah.
Like, the rule of thumb among all my developer friends is assume that any console version of a game is going to sell 3 to 4 times what the PC version does.
At least.
The PC version is, and that's assuming a successful all across the board on every platform game. 2K is willing to do this because Epic's probably giving them some kind of incentive, and they're going to sell 4 or 5 times that many copies on PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
Like, their money is made on the consoles.
Oh, yeah.
So if they want to get some free money, guaranteed free money from Epic ahead of time instead of from selling the game on
PC version?
Yeah,
Oh,
great.
yeah.
Of course it's on. Of course that's going to happen.
Why hasn't Valve done this all along? Because they didn't have to. It had a monopoly.
They had no competition.
Yeah.
And for all the talk of monopoly, Disney's a monopoly. No, we want competition. Here's competition.
Yeah.
Epic Store's competition. I realize
people rebel against it.
Well, I realize the Epic Store's competition is not in the sense like, oh, they made a superior product.
Yeah.
So people are gravitating to that instead.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to make you come to our product because if you don't want if you want this thing you want. But that's also how competition works.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Like, this theater has this actor and it doesn't have this actor back in the old vaudeville day. Like, that was how you did it. Or you lured the star player over here and now you got to go see this team play if you want to see that star player.
I mean, that still happens.
Yeah, of course it does.
Yeah, so
the Lakers just tried it. Didn't work so well.
They did try. It didn't really work well at all, actually. I mean, they tried to pay to be competitive, and it didn't work. Yeah. But people are doing it all the time in every facets of business. So it's been interesting to watch some people get so angry over this.
At the very least, I think it might stir Valve into motion, which, like, that can't hurt.
It definitely can't hurt. Like, maybe it'll make some damn video games. Like, it's had it on autopilot for so long because of Steam. I am so glad to see it get its cage rattled a little bit.
The index is coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look. Now all of a sudden, here comes a VR helmet.
I think that was in planning before the Epic Store did anything.
No way. No, they started their VR helmet the day that they announced the Epic Game Store, and they used all their money to make it in 2 months.
Tim Sweeney made an anonymous phone call to Gabe. He's like, you might want to get that VR helmet running, Gabe. We're coming for you. And then you just hear like the sound of like a cash register in the background for 5 minutes, and Gabe just can't hang the phone up fast enough.
I will say this. After learning more about Borderlands 3, I'm starting to come around on it a little bit. I've said before, I'm not a huge fan of Borderlands. Never have been. But I've always end up giving the next one a chance. I didn't think I was even going to do that with Borderlands 3, but I think I will. I think I'll play it and see.
I will. I didn't actually play the pre-sequel until it became like $10.
Yeah.
Like I got the pre-sequel because it was cheap in a bundle at some point.
Yep. Didn't they give it away on Xbox Live or
probably?
PlayStation Plus?
Like I did. definitely did not pay more than $10 for that game, and I might have even gotten it free through one of those things like that.
Yeah.
Because it was just so much of the same, and I feel like 3 is going to be more. The only thing that would really put me off 3 is if the games as a service stuff is extremely intrusive.
Yep.
Which it might be. I mean, I don't know.
It's 2K.
Yeah.
The new Pactor factor. Someone asked Pactor about that. They're like, "What's going to be up with Borderlands 3? It's 2K." I was kind of shocked that Pactor just blew it off. He was like, "Oh, whatever." And like off camera, I'm like, NBA 2K is like one of the worst franchises. Yeah. And then and people don't realize when we shoot Pactor Factor, a lot of times when we're recording something, he'll start replying, and then I'll say something to him and be like, hey, you probably should address this. And that was one of the things I told him. I'm like, hey, NBA 2K is one of the worst in the industry with this micro. And he was like, well, with sports games. And I'm like, but he was saying that sports games aren't treated the same. And I was like, why would you say that? He's like, because you can still play the game if you want. And I'm like, but you can, but if you want to be good at these games and you want to compete legitimately and maybe have a chance of being in competitions to play esports, all those contests are played with the modes that have the microtransactions. They're played with Ultimate Team. And he's like, well, that doesn't matter. You can still just play the game and have fun. I'm like, no, when you pay money for a game, you shouldn't have to choose, like, which part of it you want to enjoy. I was not getting through to him. So in that factor, if you were frustrated with that reply, I was trying.
Is there
really trying to make him understand.
Is there also an element of, like, the assumption that people who play sports games primarily may not know that they're getting screwed?
It's possible.
In that sense,
it's possible. You know? They're more casual for sure.
Like if you don't, whereas like people who play Borderlands main audience is going to be a lot more sensitive to like that kind of tactic.
That's true.
Because it's almost like a mobile game thing. So sometimes I feel like hardcore sports gamers are sort of halfway between like the mobile gamers we were talking about earlier, who gladly fork over their money for Galaxy of Heroes or whatever, and like a more core gamer who can play something like Borderlands and see when they're being pandered to.
It's pretty brilliant what EA and 2K have done, though. Mm-hmm. They have ensured that the standard mode that everyone will play in their tournaments are the modes that generate revenue. Mm-hmm. So even if you go on YouTube and you look at the really good Madden players, and they'll challenge each other, it's this whole network of, I'm going to challenge you, and they talk smack to each other, it's funny. But they play Ultimate Team. And it's because EA decided, like, this is where you're going to test your might. This is where you're going to test your mettle. How good are you at Ultimate Team? It's not just picking the stock Pittsburgh Steelers and seeing how good you are. You're going to play with this team that has Ben Roethlisberger as a quarterback, but has OBJ as a receiver, and has Kareem Hunt as a running back. That's what they've set as a standard for those games, and it was all by design, because those are the modes that generate the money. And that's what concerns me about Borderlands. How are they going to apply the microtransactions? Are they going to make sure that the part of Borderlands 3 that people are going to most want to play is the part of the game that is most saturated with microtransactions?
Like the microtransaction thing with the main players these days, the big publishers, I feel like it's almost like they're playing shuffleboard.
Yeah.
Like they're sliding that microtransaction puck out, and they don't want to cross that line, but they want to come as close to it as they can.
It's like the Price is Right.
Yeah, and like for like Battlefront 2, like EA was like, and it just banged it against the back of the thing. It fell off the edge of the thing.
Yeah, it slid all the way up into the pool.
Yeah, and hit the big dude in the head, and he gets out of the pool. He's like, come on. It was like the worst possible throw. Whereas, and like the rest of these guys, are like, oh, EA did that. We better be more careful. But you see, like you're just sort of waiting to see if like each one crosses that line.
Yeah.
And like if it's right before that, it's okay. Oh, it's a little bit over the line, but I can deal with it. All right, that's too much. I feel like you're just sort of waiting and watching. It's like curling. And like, will it make it, or will it go too far?
I thought it was a great question. I thought Pac just kind of blew it off. I have real concerns about Borderlands.
When you think, I hadn't thought about NBA 2K because I don't think about NBA. I don't think about NBA 2K so much that I forgot to draft it this year.
Right.
But like,
you usually do.
And I drafted Anthem. If anything tells you that I was trying to give BioWare the benefit of the doubt one last time.
I think we all were.
The fact that I picked Anthem first.
Yeah, you want to. You want to see it succeed. We've had so many great experiences.
They had all hands on deck on it. I really thought they were going to pull that off. But anyway. I think once you bring up NBA 2K and its history of that, that's a valid concern. You'd like to think that they're not naive enough to not see what's happening elsewhere in the industry and see what's happened to EA with Battlefront, and kind of like how you go walk that line. But at the same time, dumber decisions have been made. So.
To Pachter, in his defense,
and God knows what Randy's doing. So.
Right. Pachter, in his defense, did bring up a good point, which is Red Dead Online has been out now for months, and they still haven't started monetizing it yet.
Although at the same time, I feel like you're sort of in a Vince Zampella situation where you can't really judge the company by what Rockstar's doing.
Yeah,
because
Rockstar's
the 8,000-pound gorilla, and however they want to do it, that's how it's going to be done.
Yeah, my guess is Gearbox doesn't have that same cachet.
Probably not. I would think.
Even though Borderlands 2 sold like 19 million.
Right, but at the same time, I feel like every time Randy would try to demand something, someone at 2K would just pop up out of nowhere, just pop up a video of like that Aliens Colonial Marines thing where the alien kind of walks in and just leaves. It's like,
either that, or they'd ask him, "Wait, you're a magician. Can't you just make the money appear?"
It's like, well, we're gonna
abracadabra.
We're gonna need to see USB drives number 4 through 7.
Yeah.
In place here, and then we'll talk about it.
Yep. All right, let's move on. One thing I do like about not having the graphics is that people watching the show live have no idea what's coming next. Usually they do. There's a little teaser there, but now they don't know what's coming. Next, we're going to talk about Nintendo VR. Nintendo Labo VR Kit. This week it was announced, shockingly, that there are going to be VR options for Super Mario Odyssey and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, Mario is a separate little 3-level thing that they're doing. You're going to be able to play the entirety of Breath of the Wild in VR with Labo.
Yeah.
I have a question. Have you ever seen a strap for the Labo VR
A strap?
visor? Yeah, so you can wear it.
I mean, probably. I don't know. I haven't paid it much attention.
I never have. Every time they show it, people are holding it up to their face.
I don't know.
Think about that, though. How do you play a VR game if you have to hold the visor the whole time you're playing?
I'm going to guess there's a visor. There's a strap.
Why would they not show people using the
I
strap?
don't know. Maybe they haven't finalized it yet.
I don't know. Do you see any holes there for a strap on
I
that?
don't know. I don't. How are you going to? I mean, unless you think you're going to like hold it to your face and play it on the sides.
I'm starting to wonder.
That would be pretty funny. I mean, it's not like a big, robust VR mode or anything here. It's just you're basically looking at it like it's an IMAX screen. It's basically it's not like you're playing it first person from Link's perspective or anything. I'm interested to see what that looks like, although I probably will never find out because I ain't buying that Labo thing. The Mario one is more interesting to me because it seems like they're sort of taking a page from Astrobot.
Yeah.
Which
I would say has been the best implementation of PlayStation VR.
It's definitely the most promising like angle to take if you're going to adapt these things. It's the most no-brainer.
I mean, you're basically just giving a different perspective to viewing the game from a third person perspective.
Although I think the perspective of the Mario Odyssey stuff is more compelling than just like putting Breath of the Wild basically on a giant screen.
Absolutely, because it's all about depth perception and jumping. Like, it can actually make 3D platformers easier to control if you think about it, if you can finally judge the distance just by looks alone.
I wonder what, I mean, look, Zelda doesn't run too well.
Right.
Zelda runs around 27 frames a second on average, and that's going to be, I mean, it's probably going to be different if you're just looking at a giant screen or whatever, but, like, that's going to get hard on the eyes after a while, I would think.
I can't even imagine playing Zelda in VR on that Labo piece of junk. I mean, if I can't handle PlayStation VR or PC HMDs, this thing is just going to make me projectile vomit.
I don't know about it. I think if you're just watching, it's like, do you get sick when you watch IMAX movies?
No.
Because that's basically what this is going to be.
Really?
So
is that really VR?
Well, I mean, it's a form of VR, yeah. That's how Netflix VR works.
Because, look, I think we're straddling the line between 3D and VR. Because that's 3D.
Yeah.
IMAX. That's not VR. There's a difference.
Not in this case, really.
I mean, they should be calling it VR.
I mean, but that is, if it's in a VR headset, it's VR, and that's for marketing purpose. It's like how you can watch videos on like the Vive in a fake giant screen, basically. Like,
yeah, but I don't consider that VR though.
Well, it depends if they simulate seats.
Seriously,
I mean, that's what Facebook. That was one of their like basic use cases. Is they want people to watch movies together in a virtual theater from like with your friends across the country, like you're all sitting on the couch together.
Yeah,
like that's one of their key things. When in the original pitch meetings for like what they wanted Oculus Rift to do, that was like job 2.
Right, but the difference is when you're sitting there watching the movie, I can see you sitting there. You're there.
Yeah, but that tech you can't even do that.
Right.
That's not
well,
even
yeah. I mean, they've completely.
But this is the kind of thing that I think the Zelda mode, as far as I understand it, that's what it's going to be. It's basically be like playing it on a giant movie screen.
Oh. Then that might make it tolerable. I still don't understand.
It'll still be in like 3D.
Play it that way.
I think it'll still be in 3D or whatever.
Yeah.
Like or it'll be. It might be like a thing where it's like the like you're just like like a hovering camera or whatever. That would be. I feel like the hovering camera thing would be like. That would make you sick because you're in the environment.
So you think that it's not?
But I feel like you can't put yourself in the game in that sense in a game that runs so poorly frame rate. I mean, you're talking about. I mean, 90 is the recommended, but like there's ways to do interpolation that like make it like a fake 90. But like, I mean, you're screaming for people to get horribly ill if you're trying to immerse them in an environment that's running in sub 30 in a VR situation. So that's why the only solution to me would be to just throw it on a giant screen in 3D.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's exactly what it's going to be, because there's no way the Switch can render these games twice.
No.
It can't render them once.
No. Mario is going to make more sense because I think it's going to be like an Astrobot thing.
And they're building it from scratch.
And they're building it for that.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, I feel like the Zelda thing is just going to be like a neat trick.
I think so, too. I think you're right. I think it's just going to be, you're just viewing it like right up to your eyeballs.
Pretty much, yeah.
Then in that case, I can't even understand what the point of it is. You may get a little bit of depth
perception. It's better than not
perception.
doing it. You know?
Is it?
Yeah, it's like it'll be in 3D. It'll be
You'll get some depth out of it, I guess.
And like, if I feel like they don't expect you to play 70 hours of the game like that. It's more of like, hey, you know, people love these vistas and this world that it takes place in, and you can go up on top of a mountain and go look down, and it's in 3D and it's beautiful. And
yeah,
great.
I think you're right. I think it's like, and that's why I wonder if there's even a strap for this thing, because
there
I think
is a strap. Vincent is saying there is a strap, but they haven't shown it. But there is a place to put a strap.
Oh, okay, that's good.
What will that be? I mean, that's going to be one hell of a strap if you're strapping a whole Switch to your face.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be heavy.
I mean, I guess you take the Joy-Cons off if you're doing it that way, but it's still a substantial thing to hold with cardboard.
Well, the other thing, too, is with a cardboard on your nose? Like, is there, like, the whole thing is crazy.
It's probably like a little plastic, like, thing or something. I don't know.
It seems so nutty. It really seems to me like Nintendo...
I mean, it's not too far off the Google Cardboard thing.
It's the 3DS all over again is what I think. I mean, they're just trying to bring back basically 3D in some way on Switch.
Yeah. I mean, people speculate
VR
about
is just
this.
a convenient name to use for 2019.
But I mean, if Google Cardboard's VR, this is VR.
Yeah,
you know, it's fine.
I mean, it basically is Google Cardboard.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder what the next Switch will have.
Yeah. What do you mean as far as VR is concerned?
For VR or integration or like some kind of add-on or something. I mean, this indicates to me that clearly Nintendo is not uninterested in the idea.
Yeah.
I mean,
even though it has kind of gone on the record saying that it wasn't.
Well, they can say that all they want, but they're the ones that put the Virtual Boy out.
Yep, absolutely.
So.
Yeah, I think what you're going to do with this when you play Zelda, you're not going to play the whole game with it on.
No,
you're going to get to those moments where you want to see things from that perspective.
Yeah. And I think this is like that probably looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, but I also think like you said, like the way they said they weren't interested. I'm sure the Labo VR thing strikes me as something like the Labo team, like they cooked this thing up and showed it to, the higher ups, and they were like, all right, that's okay. You did something pretty cool there. We can do this.
Yeah.
We can move forward with this. It was maybe not a priority, but someone in that Labo team was just like, this was their pet project. They're like, I can make it do this. I know I can get the Switch to do this, and they did it. And here we are.
Yeah. The other problem too is obviously
how much does it cost?
Like $80, I think.
Jeez.
Total, but it includes like all the other stuff.
But like the
game and all the cardboard and all that stuff.
Still, I mean, it's not a $700 headset, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like the way to dip your toe into VR before you want to take the plunge. Absolutely. So we'll see how it goes. It's coming out April 25th. Also, I should mention both Mario and Zelda are free. They're free downloads or updates. Yeah, so you don't have to pay any extra.
I mean, I am mildly tempted by the Mario thing.
Yeah, it looks like Astrobot Mario.
Astrobot Mario.
Yeah. Like if they want to keep putting out
there's
levels,
not a single word in that sentence I don't like.
Nope. Exactly. Yeah. So maybe it might end up being a little better than we thought.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a neat. It's like everything Labo does. It's a neat trick.
But will it last? Does it have staying power?
Not so far.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think
it hasn't given up on it.
No, I think it's just a little thing. It's a little, like it's a first toe in the VR space for Nintendo and in the modern era.
Second, I guess.
Well, no, let's not bring that up.
Nintendo doesn't want us to bring it up.
No. I was shocked when Reggie mentioned it when Sessler asked about when the 3DS was unveiled, and he's like, "How long have you been working on this?" And Reggie said, "Since the Virtual Boy."
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't believe you said Virtual Boy.
I can see that with the 3DS tech, though. Because the
yeah.
3DS tech was kind of mind-blowing. It still kind of is. Like, I still don't understand how it works.
Sure.
It still might be witchcraft.
It's a little bit of magic right there.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
I was surprised they said Virtual Boy. I mean, you could have just said, like, 15 years.
Yeah.
But you said it's Virtual Boy.
Yeah.
And, like, no one says Virtual Boy.
No. That's
you,
for
you
sure.
hurt children's eyes with that thing.
Yeah, they might hurt people's eyes with this thing. We'll see how it goes.
Or their stomachs.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna move on.
I have faith that Nintendo wouldn't do something like
It would
that.
hurt kids?
Yeah, well, not.
Remember, they had to put the disclaimer on the 3DS post haste.
Yeah, but I also don't really believe that. So I think the science on that is pretty shaky.
As far as like it hurting kids' eyes,
damaging kids. Yeah, it's like kids see 3D all the time.
They're seeing 3D all the time. Yeah. People are just very protective.
In the 50s, there were teenagers who were wearing 3D glasses all the time. They didn't see blue and red for the rest of their life. It's fine.
Yeah.
I just feel like they would test this for nausea problems. Probably pretty extensively.
Well, they should test it on me, because I am a good guinea pig. I'll tell you that much.
So.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about the next Assassin's Creed. The Division 2, it turns out, had a little Easter egg in it. And one of the buildings in the game, if you searched around, there were posters on the wall that showed basically a hint at what's coming for the next Creed. The Apple of Eden was in one of this. It was on the poster. And I think that's what caught people's attention. And you start looking closer at it, and it basically reveals that the next Assassin's Creed is a Viking setting. Kotaku followed that up, that discovery, with its sources, and again, Jason Schreier confirmed with his independent sources that, in fact, the next Assassin's Creed is set in a Viking era.
Contradicting their previous leak that it was in Rome.
Right. Yeah.
Which is a little disappointing because it felt like Egypt to Greece to Rome was kind of a nice
It seemed to make
arc.
a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Where
but then again,
Vikings, not so much.
At the same time, though, Rome could have felt a lot like Greece.
That's true.
So changing it up to Vikings might be a pretty smart move, and it also gives you a good reason to change up the naval combat, which I think by the 150th hour was getting a little stale in Odyssey.
Yeah.
So changing that up into sort of a more berserker ramming stuff and jumping on guys with shield, that could be pretty awesome.
I think it could be like the best Assassin's Creed ever.
Potential's there.
Seriously. I mean, the tone could be completely different. Imagine playing as like a badass marauder instead of this. Here's the one thing, though. Stealth. Vikings aren't stealthy, man. They're just like, they're the antithesis of stealth. They are just in your face, just rush the enemy.
They can be, but
brute force.
Well, that's the stereotypical belief of them, but Vikings were smart warriors. Like, they could... if you're outnumbered and you're in, you land your ship somewhere and you got like 30 guys and you're just running around the countryside, if everybody gets together and comes at you, you're dead. So no matter how badass of a Viking you are, so yeah, there was some stealth to that. You gotta scout some stuff out. You gotta work your way through. You gotta take them, and then when you go loud, when you've got them on their heels.
I mean,
but
Vikings,
you could definitely play that way.
Vikings may have had assassins.
Sure.
Guys that snuck in behind enemy lines and did the dirty work.
Well, also, like, you get to the edge of the village and you scout things out and you figure things out, and then everybody can charge or whatever. Yeah. Or you take out the key guys, or you sabotage some stuff, come back out, then you send the berserkers in. There's a lot of, warfare has, even as the Vikings practice it, there's a lot of different things you can do with that. And it's Assassin's Creed. Screw it. Like, it's... You know what else didn't happen? The ancient Greek warriors didn't jump off 100-foot cliffs, use a shockwave to stun everybody, and then like shoot them with like sonic fire arrows.
How do you know? Were you there?
Yes. Can reveal now. I'm 2,000 years old, and everything Cassandra said she could do, she really did.
Were there female warriors?
Yes.
There were.
In fact...
I know I've seen, like, caricatures.
Some archaeological sites indicate that there were bands of Vikings that were mostly women.
Really?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned ship combat. Obviously, the Viking ships are small.
Yeah, they're not...
I don't know how you can pull off the naval combat the way it has been.
Some of the long ships were decent size. You just basically... I think you can just do a permutation of what Odyssey and Origins have already done.
But they had no cannons.
Neither do these. They just use arrows.
Oh, arrows, right. Yeah, I guess the Vikings could use that.
I mean, that's not even particularly historically accurate in the Greek thing. You can't hit anything with a frickin' arrow from a moving ship. Like, that's just like, to give the gameplay a little pizzazz.
But Matt, that's why you fire 1,000 of them at once.
No, Greek naval combat was about maneuvering to ram somebody and then getting on the ship and killing everyone.
Yeah.
Like you were literally maneuvering around to ram into each other. That was the whole point. I mean, maybe you could use some Greek fire here and there, or whatever, but we don't know how to make that anymore.
Yeah.
But you can fudge that as much as you want to make the gameplay fun, basically. And so they did in Odyssey, and I'm sure they will in this one as well. And that's fine. I don't demand exact historical accuracy from my historical simulator VR Matrix Ancient Aliens game.
It is a fine line that the Assassin's Creed franchise skirts, though, because it wants to be historically accurate, but it can't be.
It wants to be historically authentic. Like I don't judge the Assassin's Creed settings by like how believable or realistic they are. I judge them by how much does it make me feel I'm there, and they did that beautifully in Origins and Odyssey, and I'm sure they'll do it. My main question is like, where does it take place? Is it going to be the shores of Scandinavia, or are you going to like go raid Ireland or England or France, or like you're going to discover the new world? Like there's a whole lot of places you can go with that.
Yep.
It's going to be very interesting to see, like especially considering the scale and size they did with Odyssey. If they keep it to that size, you could be talking about a game that covers the entire North Atlantic.
I just like how it's going to completely change the tone of the game. Like, the game has kind of been bougie all this time. It's always like you're always a part of high society, of what era it's from. You're never just this barbarian marauder. Like,
I mean, you were in Odyssey to some degree. You're just some guy or girl who...
Yeah, but you're rubbing elbows with the elite. You're always in like the nicest buildings. You're hobnobbing with the smartest people, the richest people.
But you really think
you're manipulating them, but you're still like a part of that. The Vikings were just like, dude, they lived in like mud camps.
No, they didn't. They lived in actual like longhouse. I mean, have you seen Thor? Like, they lived in like actual. Obviously they lived in some pretty rough things when they were in campaign.
They didn't really live anywhere.
Vikings weren't nomadic. They lived in specific locations back home. They just traveled
but they were
a lot.
Always conquering. They're always out. And I'm wondering if
they were always raiding. They weren't conquering. You're thinking about Attila the Hun.
What's the difference between raiding and conquering?
Conquering means you take the location and hold it. Raiding means you take stuff and leave. It's a difference between a robber. No, it's not. It's a difference between a robber and a guy who steals your shit and won't leave your house. Like, there's two very different things.
I think you know what I meant.
Not really.
You're splitting hairs.
No,
yes, you are.
I don't know I don't really know what you mean, because like that's not what the Vikings did.
They went places, killed people, and took shit.
Yeah,
I don't know what you want to call that.
That's raiding. Conquering means you took over the country.
Don't you think when you go to some place and you kill everybody, you just conquered them?
Not if you leave.
Anyway, why do you get caught up on shit like this? I don't get it.
Because that's what Vikings did. They were Viking raids.
Anyway, Vikings were always on the go.
Well, the military was.
They were always out trying to kill people and take their shit.
That's a real simple way of looking at it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the way video games work. They look at the most simple element of what something was.
Well, except the Assassin's Creed games don't do that. Sometimes to their detriment. I mean, I think you sat in way too many legislative meetings in Assassin's Creed 3, for instance.
I don't think it'll be fun to live as a part of Viking society. I think it would be more fun to be doing what Vikings typically were doing, which was out going after other people and trying to take what they had.
Well, I'm sure there will be part of that, but there's going to be the old Assassin's Creed story where you get involved in some you're going to find some weird first, whatever they call the first ones or whatever. There's a name
the first society.
I know
what you're talking about.
Those guys, the weirdos that invented the apples and everything. You're gonna find some weird thing that like gives you some. You're gonna find something that you stick on your axe, and that's gonna like make the axe shoot fire or something. Just like this Odyssey, where you had the spear, which was actually an artifact from the original first civilization or whatever. And you'll get involved in stuff. I mean, you're going to totally be hanging out with Leif Erikson, I promise. And every probably run into like the proto King Arthur of some point. Like when you invade when you invade England or whatever. There's gonna be some prominent historical figures one way or the other. It's an Assassin's Creed game. I mean, it is a little ridiculous in Odyssey by the end of it, where you're literally partying with Socrates, Aristophanes, and like all the major people.
That's what I was saying. The game's always, you're never like the grunt, the poor person, or the people who are scratching to survive. You're always kind of a part of the affluent part of the society.
But I would disagree with that, because I think you generally are exactly that, but you're that person caught up in the elite. Like Cassandra and Alexios are exactly what you're describing, but they get caught up in this like high stakes like
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't want to be. I would rather play an Assassin's Creed where that doesn't happen, where you play. It's a different tone. Like you're always around royalty in Assassin's Creed. You're around the powerful people, and a lot of times you have to kill them or you're trying to stop them from doing something terrible. But you're always around them. Like I would prefer to play a Creed where it's just gritty and maybe more like a God of War type thing, where it's just like this place that you go and you're fighting for survival. You're holding on by your fingernails. I don't know.
I think you're going to be disappointed if that's.
I know. Now that you're bringing it up, like I think you're right. I think they are going to just make it in Viking society, and that makes my excitement for the game like just chopped in half like right away. Like I would rather play as a Viking instead of living in where Vikings go when they're not really being Vikings.
I mean, I think it will be both things, but I think you're going to see the home front in the same way that because that's what Viking raids were. You went out, you raided wherever you're going to do, and then you brought the booty home. And so, like, I'm sure there will be. My guess is the beginning of the game is going to send you out on some like crazy, awesome, badass Viking raid, like what you're describing. But then you'll leave. You torch the place, you kill the you loot the stuff, and you kill the people, and you take the things, and you whatever. And one of the things you loot happens to be
an
a
apple.
First civilization. Exactly. It's like that's going to be that village's like sacred object or something, and you take it, and somebody's like, "Don't take it," and you take it, and the whole place shakes, and like I swear to God, I don't have any inside info on this game, but I guarantee you. And you sail back, and they'll put the title Assassin's Creed Kingdom up as you sail into the harbor of your home Viking village, and everybody will come out, and you'll do like the slow walk through the whole village back up to the longhouse.
Back.
Like the kids will run out, and the dog will come out, and your character will pet the dog, so you like your character now because he pets dogs. And you get up to the longhouse, and the chief, who's like probably your dad or your uncle or something, comes out. It's like, what have you brought back? We brought back many things. And then they'll have and they'll find this thing that like go like, and it'll dissolve somebody important, and then they'll blame you for it, and you have to leave the village and go out into the world and recruit your whole group, and then you'll run into somebody who's like some kind of proto-Assassin's Guild guy, and you'll end up like helping them, and then they'll find out you have one of those artifacts, like, oh, I'm going to stick with you, and then that's how you're going to end up on this whole quest to figure out what the Templars are doing and all this. I mean, I'm right. That's exactly what this fucking game is going to be.
That's how they all play out, but that's what I'm saying. I would want something different from this game.
I can understand that.
I don't want the game to be like, the Vikings aren't as bad as people think they are.
Oh, I think the Vikings are going to be as bad as people think they are.
I hope they are.
But I think everybody is going to be that bad.
Yeah.
It's I mean, you could. I mean, look, the people who made For Honor get it.
Yeah.
I think.
Did you watch that doc?
Yeah, I think Ubisoft has a handle like internally on what Vikings can be. I think you won't be disappointed in the depiction of Viking life. I mean, they do their research on that kind of thing. But I just think that like it's going to be more, the modern action RPG Assassin's Creed formula than you think. It's just going to be in the North Atlantic, and there's going to be a raiding mechanic, and probably like that'll be how you like replenish your crew or something. I think there's going to be a lot of naval stuff, not naval combat like between like tall ships or something, but I think there's going to be a lot of sailing. You know what I mean? Just because
that's what they did.
They're a sea people.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be a lot of that. I think there's going to be a lot of exploration because like you're striking out and finding these new places, including maybe North America at one point because they beat Columbus to that one by a few hundred years. I think there's a lot of meat there.
I think the opportunity is better than it's ever been to make an amazing game.
Yeah.
And I hope that they concentrate on the right things and try to make it different from other creeds.
I think that's why you take that year off here, but I think the differences are going to be more in the gameplay systems that are in place to make it feel like Viking stuff as opposed to like changing the formula of how these games unfold, because that's just proven at this point. Like that's just, it works. There's no reason to change.
You're going to take outposts. You're going to synchronize.
You're going to be outposts. You're going to be like. I mean, I do wonder what the character is going to look like, because there's a point at which your
characters, you mean?
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be able to pick male or female Viking, but like my question becomes like, there's a point at which my stereotypical image of a Viking is not someone who can climb a tower.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or climb at all.
Right.
Like, no, they're big, brutish dudes with big, like, axes. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, to me, it just seems like it has the opportunity to completely flip the script on this franchise.
I just don't think that's going to happen, because otherwise you haven't made Assassin's Creed. You've made Viking Battle for Asgard 2, which I wouldn't necessarily argue with, because I did like Viking Battle for Asgard. If no one remembers what that is, that was the Creative Assembly open world Viking game from like the 360 generation, which I actually liked a lot more than I probably should have.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
But I did like it.
It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either.
But it did kind of get at the heart of what you're asking.
Yeah, it had the tone that I'm talking about, absolutely. So we'll see.
I'm also interested because, like, as Origins and Odyssey both were willing to go into sort of the mythology of things and like kind of get a little crazy in that regard.
I love that.
And so, obviously Viking, Norse mythology is very open to that. In terms of the first civilization stuff, you could probably make a real hard play for a couple of those guys being the original Norse gods, like some guy with a eye patch from the first civilization, like some hologram guy is Odin or whatever.
Yeah.
There's already implications in Odyssey that the various the various AIs sort of masqueraded as different gods through the years in different civilizations. So there's a lot you can do with that. I mean, I am a little more interested in this than, say, if it was, I mean, I certainly would have played it if it was Rome. But I do think that Rome is so similar to Greece in just sort of basic visual trappings that doing something that like differentiates itself more. Like, you're not going to mistake the Viking game for the Greece game.
No.
So that is probably a wiser choice.
Yeah, I also feel like Rome's just a little bit played out at this point. Like,
well, I would say Norse mythology is too a little bit. I mean, you're up against God of War at that point.
Yeah.
And like that's a tough opponent.
It's a tough
to
comparison,
choose.
but if there's a franchise that can do it,
right?
This is one of them.
True.
So,
and it's obviously going to do a very different thing with it, but
I'm excited by this. Honestly, I think it's,
I'm definitely more interested in a Viking Assassin's Creed than I am with a
Roman one.
I mean, I would play the Roman one, but this is I just played 140 something hours of a Greece one, and look,
you just finished it last night.
Not trying to piss off our Greek and Italian viewers or anything, but they're even the gods have different names, but they're the same people.
They are,
come on.
Yeah.
Et tu, Brute? Yes, me too. Yes, me as well. It did happen. And but do some Viking stuff. You're a little more wide open. You're a little freer. Like you don't have to. That's the other thing is like you're free to sort of make your own history up a little more, because like Viking history is a little more freeform. Not a lot of written records. Whereas if you do ancient Rome, you're sort of locked into doing the Caesar story and kind of all that. Everybody knows how that goes.
You're going to go to the Colosseum. I mean, you're going
to hang out with Cicero.
Yeah, I mean, there's just like all these checklists you just know. And like with this other setting, to me, it just seems completely wide open of what it could be and what we could experience.
Yeah, so. I think you're a lot more free to and you can bring in like I guess I was talking about like the original King Arthur. You can bring in like vaguely, or do we even know they existed, historical figures that may or may not be historical figures, and sort of flesh them out a little more. There is a chance that it'll be more down and dirty and muddy, just in the sense that like if you're going for the usual Viking time period, that whole section of Europe was not particularly advanced. The castles were some of the worst places to live because they were freezing and disgusting.
Right.
So there's a lot you could do with that and make it a little less opulent than sort of like the high end. I mean, even the Assassin's Creeds that take place and stuff like ancient, they're pretty good about scattering horse shit everywhere. They don't look like places that smell good.
Yeah.
They're pretty honest about that stuff. So yeah, I mean,
but inevitably you end up hobnobbing with the elite almost every time.
Yeah, I think though in this setting, you have a point in the sense that like the elite in this setting are still going to be pretty.
Oh yeah, they're still living in a
people.
tent.
Yeah,
they're like and that's what I like about it, and that's what I think will give it.
Even if you end up on like mainland England or Ireland, you're not even in brave. You're not
still
even
rugged.
Yeah, you're still in a very different setting than sort of the people reclining on couches eating grapes in Odyssey.
Yep.
So it'll be a good shift.
Absolutely.
And I can see a whole lot of different gameplay systems that could make stuff different and more varied and shake things up. Even if you're not going to shake up the formula of how the story kind of unfolds in terms of how you introduce the main character into this sort of world of Templars and Assassins. Although that's also a good point. In that, I'm not saying my own point is a good point, but like I just thought of like because this is probably taking place several hundred years after the games we just played,
Yeah.
you are in full Templar assassin territory.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're not looking at kind of the
Well, I don't want to
nascent sort of
spoil too
forms.
much, but the last game like kind of explains the origins.
Yeah, like the last 2 games are sort of explaining how that comes about, and so now you're kind of finally back to the assassins and Templars again for the first time in
5 years.
5 years, 6 years.
Syndicate, I guess, would be
Syndicate
the last one.
the last one.
Yeah. So, pretty excited about it.
Yeah, and we'll
it's
see
coming in 2020. It will probably be a bridge game between the generations.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Which is a big deal. I mean, that tech's looking pretty hot already on the current machine.
We'll have to get through Watch Dogs 3 first.
Yeah, which also was leaked this week. That's coming in. It takes place in England.
Takes place in London.
Which that's where the last Creed was that actually had the.
Yeah. Funny how it all works.
All those things are all connecting together.
Well, the Watch Dogs 2 did confirm that Watch Dogs and Assassin's Creed take place in the same universe.
Yeah. So, I mean, we got the hint for this from the Division 2.
Right.
How crazy is that?
Division had a couple of things like that.
It did.
It was interesting, but yeah, London.
Really
I think
bizarre.
that's where the Watch Dogs thing came from too. It was some data mining thing.
Oh, it did?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Modern London's a good choice. It's a cool choice for that. We'll see.
I like that Ubisoft somehow, some way, all their stuff gets leaked.
Yeah, well, they're a big company.
They are big, and they're all over the world.
You got 800 people around the globe working on your game. Someone's going to talk.
Yeah, and if it doesn't leak by traditional means, like someone will just see something on like a subway train. Like it's just no matter what, their stuff leaks every time. It's crazy to me and bizarre. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about GameStop.
And it's always Kotaku.
yeah, exactly. And if it's not that, it's Kotaku. You're right. Kotaku has sources.
There must be propaganda posters at Ubisoft of Schreier.
Oh, yeah.
It's like someone talked with a dagger in it.
Who knows this guy? Because he keeps getting the info, so his source hasn't been
pan
figured
over
out
and it's
yet.
like him in a fake mustache. It's like,
That's great. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to talk next about GameStop.
taking pictures of concept art with like a little thumb camera. Like,
Yeah. This may be the last time we talk about GameStop.
I think we'll talk about them again when they finally
fold.
Yeah, it's like we ain't done.
Yeah, so GameStop last year had, I don't know if it was his worst year ever.
We talk about all our great memories of GameStop. It'll be our shortest segment ever.
No, you're absolutely right. GameStop lost $673 million last year. This is only the second year ever the company lost money. Mm-hmm. Ever.
It's a lot.
And not only did it lose money, it lost $673 million.
That's enough money to make Halo Infinite.
Here's the thing, though. That last year, they also sold that crappy cell phone business that they were in for like $400 million. So they actually lost like $1 billion basically last year. Holy crap, man. How could you go from turning a profit to essentially losing $1 billion a year later?
Well, you would have to be a shitty pawn shop that tries to bilk people out of their video games for
that
less
is
money than they're
where
worth.
it has lost almost all the revenue.
And
used game sales.
Yep. The digital world.
That's what. So earlier we were talking about this. I wanted to segue into this so hard, but I knew it was like several topics away, so I didn't. So when we were talking earlier about, that was kind of what I was hinting at, is like all these things.
That Wolfenstein copy is never coming back to GameStop.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and so.
I guess it could, but then you're just buying a box.
Yeah, you're. So I wonder if you trade it in, will they just take the box?
Yeah. We'll give you 20 cents for the box. Go
Matt,
away.
why do you think used game sales have fallen through the floor?
I think because people have shifted to buying digital and you can't sell those back.
I mean, that
the
really
volume,
might
basically,
be
it's just
it.
the volume has changed.
Yeah. I mean, they don't have people coming in there every day like, hey, I just bought this a week ago. Now give me $5 for it and sell it for $50. And I wonder, too, if people are so educated on what GameStop is doing that they're just like, why would I ever sell it to them?
That's part of it. And I'm also like, for a long time, Best Buy's Gamer Club thing was a better deal.
Right.
Amazon's was a better deal. A lot of people find good deals for like codes or whatever online. The digital market has taken a big bite, and also competitors, the big box competitors that woke up to like the idea that like, hey, there's a market here, and GameStop is terrible at this, especially new game sales. I mean, remember that, that was the whole thing. It's like they got in as many copies of a new game as to fill pre-orders plus like 3 more copies.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't get them.
Yeah.
I remember when the last generation only was when places like Best Buy or Target or Walmart started getting games in day of release.
Yeah.
Because previously the big thing with pre-ordering at GameStop was because if you didn't get it at GameStop, you weren't going to get it from a normal retail store for another day or two.
Yeah.
And so, and certainly Amazon didn't have, day of delivery yet for that kind of, release day delivery. So, like,
GameStop was also the only ones doing, like, midnight sales for most games.
Right, or you got, like, the old pre-order bonus shtick where you get the code for the extra sword you didn't ever use.
Yeah.
Or whatever. It's and some of that stuff is still not available. Like reinstalling some like backwards compatible stuff on the Xbox One. I noticed like some of my stuff there has like pre-order bonuses from things. You still can't buy them separate. Like
wow.
I mean they're useless, but they
hung in
exclusives.
there. They were legit.
But like, yeah, I think the competition just figured out like, hey, we can do this better than you, and you already sort of had this sort of hostage situation with most of the gaming public. I don't think any of us like GameStop.
No, I don't know anyone. I've never met someone who said they love GameStop.
And it's like you went there because you had to. Because otherwise, in the instant, I could get stuff the day of from Amazon or the day of or midnight launch at Best Buy, like down, literally 2 doors down from GameStop in West Hollywood. Yeah, I'm going to Best Buy. Screw you. I don't want to be here if I don't have to be.
I watched a YouTube video about a week ago of a guy who was a lot like us and had been hardcore into games like his whole life and had a huge collection, and he just decided he was over it, and he took everything to a GameStop. And he literally had a pickup truck full of video games, like that many boxes full of games. Like it was literally like one of us going to GameStop. And it was one of the most demoralizing things I've ever seen. First of all, he ended up going back with like half of his games because GameStop wouldn't even buy them, even for a quarter. They just wouldn't even flat out take them. And the average price after they got the money and they basically divided by how many games they had sold, the average cost he got per game was like 43 cents.
Yeah.
43 cents.
Sounds about right.
How can you run a business where you pay $1 or less for everything and then sell it for at least $30 to $50 and not stay solvent?
I don't know.
It is mind-blowing.
I guess you just don't move any product, really.
I mean, you go to GameStop, you go to trade in one of your games or sell them one of your games. If you just bought it like the week before, they'll give you like $10 or whatever. Mm-hmm. Then you go over and right there they are being sold for $50. It's like, I can't believe it took people so long to be like, you know what, screw that. Like, I'm not going to give you this game for nothing. Like, I'd rather keep it or sell it on eBay or whatever. There's a million other ways that you can get more money out of that game. I haven't understood why people have done it ever. I've never sold anything to GameStop in my entire life. Ever. I've never traded anything in there. Have you?
I don't think so. If I did, it was like old copies of Madden that I got from work or something, like maybe, but like you never got enough for it to make it worth it. It wasn't worth the gas you used to get to the store most of the time. It's not.
That's the crazy part. That's what that kid was like, holy crap, like my whole life. He ended up getting like, I think it was like $400.
That's right. Just sell it on eBay.
He made like $400. He made probably 5 times that off the ad revenue from the video. Yeah. I'm not kidding. Like he legitimately did. So used game sales are going away. I mean, it's a failing business.
Shrewd, sir.
Yeah,
I see what you did there.
Yeah. What do you do if you're GameStop at this point? There's nothing you can do.
Die.
You're dying. That's it.
I mean, the Funko Pop's the only thing keeping you afloat for a while, but even that seems to be slowing down.
Yeah, I mean, it actually went up again. Like their merchandise stuff went up again year over year, but when the bottom's falling out of everything else.
Well, now their new thing is like they're trying to be an esports like locale, right? Like
their new CEO, his idea to pull GameStop up out of the muck was to start esports schools at GameStops. You can't make this shit up. You can't.
No, like I think like there's an idea in there. There's a nugget of something in there to try to turn the GameStops into something similar to like what like local board game stores are.
Like
you
a
know what I mean?
hangout.
Like a hangout where people go and paint their miniature. You know, like there's a board game store like around here, and there's like a bunch. Like you go paint the miniatures. You have game nights. People come play Magic. They do tournaments and stuff. Like there's something there, but that is such a hard pivot for a national chain.
They would have to gut.
Like I don't even know what you'd have to. Yeah.
Store. They have to gut and remodel every store.
Yeah.
Change the layout, but then you lose all the shelf space. If you make it like a lounge, where does all the stuff go that you're supposed to sell?
Well, even like, when was the last time you were in a GameStop that had an even floor?
Oh, I know.
That doesn't have random steps everywhere and shit,
It's so
right?
funny that you would bring that up. Like, you're right.
Like everything's a ramp or a thing.
Yeah,
Like
particularly
weird...
back in the old days when they were called Funko Land. Those stores were
yeah.
really, really bad.
Funko Land almost put us out of business when I was running an independent store in '99.
You know that's what GameStop is. It was originally Funko Land.
Yeah?
Yeah.
See, GameStop was to me, GameStop is like the...
Electronics Boutique. And
Well, no, Electronics Boutique was what we had. We had Electronics Boutique and Software Etc. and Babbage's.
Yeah.
And and
I
then
bought my
GameStop.
Dreamcast and
GameStop
Software
came in.
Etc.
Like GameStop came in like a giant amoeba of suck.
Yeah.
And then we didn't have any Funko Lands until 1999.
They were originally Funko Land.
Funko Land opened across the street from the independent game store I managed in '99.
And shut you guys
and
down.
the store's still there in some form because we also had a DJ annex.
Oh.
That kept like the music kept the doors open, and also we accepted any games. So we went all the way back to Atari 2600.
Right.
So we had the advantage.
Oh, yeah, they cut you off at GameStop
Yeah.
now at like, I think maybe even like Xbox 360 and PS3.
Yeah, that's as far back as it goes. Now,
Yeah.
I think they don't even take original Xbox PS2.
What happens to all that inventory when GameStop folds? Where do all
Trash.
those used games go?
Probably.
They just throw them away?
Landfill somewhere, probably.
Wow. That's crazy to think about.
I mean, I'm sure they'll do like kind of last minute fire sale stuff, but like,
Do you think somebody buys their inventory?
who?
I don't know.
Who would want
Me.
that?
I'll buy it.
You want 14 copies of
Madden 2002.
They don't even have any of that
NFL
anymore.
Quarterback Club
Their
2000.
Their backlog only goes back to like 2005.
Yeah, I know. It just
In
boggles my
somewhere there's a
mind.
gold mine of original copies of Condemned Criminal Origins, but I don't know who wants to pay 40 cents for that.
I mean, look, I understand their profit margins are really slim on games. They make $12 per game, and that's it. But when your profit margins on the used stuff is that high and you can't succeed, I mean, it's time to fold the tent.
Like used game market just isn't what it used to be because of the digital element. Like people are more willing now to, for better or worse, to throw money at this thing that they're never going to get money back for. And to be fair, they never really got a lot of money back for it anyway.
I'm wondering if GameStop's used game policies and the pittance that they pay for used games is a big reason why people have gone digital. Because they look at it, most people think about
what are you
reselling
really
a game.
losing?
Right. When they think about reselling a game, they're not thinking about selling it to like you or me on Craigslist or on eBay. They're thinking to themselves, when I take this back to GameStop, they're going to offer me $1.25 for it.
Well, also, like you've had things like the Amazon Club, and
Right.
there are other places to take your used games, and even if they beat GameStop by like a quarter,
That's a quarter.
it's a quarter
per game.
It's a more
that adds
trade-in.
up. Yeah.
So
I'm just wondering if GameStop's policies
and those
have
other
actually contributed to the demise of GameStop.
I'm sure it did.
Think about it, because if you're
Yeah,
offering
we've been waiting
nothing,
for this for like 20 years.
I know. But if you're offering nothing for used games, and that's your business, you're decentivizing people to contribute to the biggest part of your business.
Yeah, but like
it's like suicide.
right, but like they used to be the only game in town for that, no pun intended, and like
They were not thinking
and
long.
the sheer volume of it kind of
Yeah.
they didn't see the digital thing coming. They didn't see these other major companies like jumping in, these big box stores kind of trying to get in on the action. Big box stores that have the revenue and pockets to do that and beat them at their own game and not feel it. Whereas like GameStop clearly does not have that kind of war chest. And they've always been a shitty company.
They have, yeah.
They're a giant pawn grifter
Pretty much.
operation.
Yeah.
Like using pawn shop tactics to like pull in kids to sell their these games for a pittance so they can get a little bit more credit to the next game they want for the next hit.
Yeah, it's just chasing. It's bad chasing bad.
And for a long time, I didn't like them, but I went there all the time because they were the only game in town. They were the ones that got the games in on the day of release.
They got the consoles on launch day. They got the biggest
stuff
allotment.
on launch day. They did stuff at midnight. They, like I didn't like going there, but I didn't have a choice.
They're a necessary evil.
And as soon as they did change it, it was like right around the same time that theaters started selling tickets for specific seats. Hell yeah, I'm going to the theater with the specific seats.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, I'm going to go over to Best Buy where they don't treat me like a freaking pariah. I don't have a lot of celebratory feelings towards GameStop going out of business because the end result of that is like thousands of people are going to lose their jobs, and that's not cool, and that's not okay, and it sucks. But like, you're at a point where just like that business model doesn't fly
It's
anymore.
Corporate Darwinism, basically.
Right. Yeah, and like maybe there's a way to pivot on that, but like you'd think that for an industry as big and lucrative as video games, there'd be a way to kind of have a chain store dedicated to video games that can like bring people in and be sort of that's why I say I think there's a nugget of something in that idea of making it into kind of the equivalent of a board game store. But like you say, do you even have the money that would require to make your company into that?
And is anyone willing to give it to you?
Also, the time to do that was like 5 years ago.
Yeah. I think that there is an opportunity to have a successful business as a video game pawn shop where you're respectful of the people. And instead of giving them $1.25 per game, you give them like what's fair. And instead of charging $50 for that used copy of the game, you charge what's fair, like $30 or $40. That, to me, if you don't have the other part of the business bloat that Best Buy or that GameStop has, you could be successful doing that. Unfortunately, GameStop is this gigantic conglomerate that has its fingers in like 5 different pies, and that's ultimately, I think, what's going to bring it down. So it is. Have they been delisted from the stock market yet?
No.
What is their share price at right now?
I don't know.
I bet you it's like in pennies, like under $1 at this point. It's crazy to think about the only brick and mortar store to go and get games is quickly going to be Best Buy. If you think about it,
Best Buy, Target,
Walmart.
Walmart's the 800-pound gorilla.
Yeah.
In that realm.
Big box stores though, that's it.
Yeah. GameStop stock is $9.82.
Wow, I cannot believe it has that much value.
Well, it's down.
Well, yeah, but still, who?
I mean, that's the frickin' graph.
Yeah,
I mean,
would you ever buy GameStop stock? Like, how does it worth $10?
I wouldn't have bought it when it was doing well.
I wouldn't either. So, times have been changed. It's been pretty crazy with sifting.
Here's an article right here on the Motley Fool. Can GameStop stock bounce back in 2019? It's clearly not doing well.
Yeah.
Shares. First week of February, shares dropped 29% for the week. So yeah, you're right. It's falling. It's not.
It's
not
headed to penny stock. It's headed there.
I mean, ideally you liquidate before you hit the point where you're worth 10 cents a share. That doesn't happen too often. But the slope is visible.
It's heading that way. If they stick around for another year and a half or 2 years.
It's definitely that scene in Toy Story 3 where they're all sliding towards the fire in a furnace.
If you have GameStop stock, go sell it right now. It's not bouncing back. I've been caught in stock.
GameStop stock, build a time machine and tell your 2012 self to sell stock.
Yeah. But I've been caught in a situation before where I had a stock and the stock kept dropping. And you get to a certain point where you're like, I've lost so much now, there's no way I'm selling it for this price. And it's a huge mistake. It's a huge
something's better than nothing.
Mistake.
And I cannot
sell it.
I mean, is there a possibility that they could come back from the brink? Yeah.
I mean, it's razor thin.
Not one that you would want to bet your own money
I can't
on.
think of a single indicator that would lead me to believe that. Not one.
Not that's there right now, no.
So if you own it, get out. Get out now. But while it's still worth, I can't believe it's worth $10 a share.
I mean, the high is much bigger than that.
Blows my mind. I figured it was like at least below $5 and probably below $1, but some people still own it for some reason.
It's too big for that.
Yeah. I guess when you pull in that much revenue, even if you're just flushing it all down the toilet. So, hey, power just went out here. We got
a big windstorm in LA.
Yeah, it's been really windy today. and the power just went completely out, and we just lost the episode. I don't even know if you guys can see this or if you're watching it right now, to be honest with you. So,
Yeah, they can see it. They just told us to start the whole episode over.
yeah, that's not going to happen. We have files. They're corrupted. I don't know if you guys remember this happened once before, and I did end up recovering the episode, but you guys probably remember it looked really crappy and sounded really bad, and that was after I worked my butt off to figure it out. So I'm going to have to try it again. This may end up being a lost episode of GameFace, which really sucks because there was a lot of work that went into this. But
Any kind of Twitch archive you can get to, or is that set?
We
to
don't
not
archive
happen?
it. Yeah, we don't have it set up to archive on Twitch because obviously people pay for the show. So GameStop got its revenge apparently.
Yeah.
There must have been somebody watching outside with like wire cutters outside your house. They were not happy about our discussion apparently.
Well,
so
they were kind enough to fix the wires 5 seconds later.
yeah. So at the very least, hopefully the power doesn't go out again. At the very least, we'll have the last topic, which is coming up. The show is almost over. That's the worst part. Literally, it was like 15 minutes till the show was over. This really sucks. So anyway, we're going to finish the last topic. We're going to show the trailer of the week. We're going to do Q&A, and at least we'll have something. And I'm going to do my best to try to get the rest of the episode recovered. It doesn't look good. We'll see. So anyway, let's move on with the last topic of today's episode, and that is the Elder Scrolls Blades. Probably the first time we've ever finished an episode of GameFace with a mobile game, and it will probably be the last time we ever finish an episode.
With
Typically,
any luck.
yeah, typically the last topic, if you haven't figured it out yet, is the biggest topic in GameFace, and this, oddly enough, is the biggest game of this week. So.
Yeah. Once we finally figured out how to make it active.
Yeah, so it's been a week-long process. Last week when we recorded the show, we had been trying to get in the game, and then a few days later, they finally opened it up to everybody, and Matt and I have both played it. Matt,
Well, actually, what happened was you had to register on your Bethesda account on their site as well as being registered as a pre-order on the Play Store or the App Store.
Oh.
That's why we didn't get in until they opened the whole floodgates, was you had to be registered on both things.
Oh.
And I didn't find that out until days and days later because they don't tell you
Yeah,
that.
they don't tell you that, yeah.
Bethesda gonna Bethesda, I suppose.
Yeah. But Matt and I, we've got in, and we have been playing the Elder Scrolls Blades. And what do you think, Matt?
I think I'm done playing the Elder Scrolls. I
am too.
I don't like this game at all. I like the idea of it, but like I don't like how it controls. I don't like how the combat works. I don't like how the spells work, and I just kind of find it boring. So I played some of it. I played like the opening thing. You build your town up. I played like the thing where you rebuild the blacksmith and like go on a couple quests with that. And I'm done. Like I don't want to play this anymore. Like
I played even less than that, and I don't want to play anymore.
I thought I played less than you did.
No, you
No?
haven't. You played more than I have. I did not refurbish the blacksmith, or maybe you just refurbished a different building than me.
No, it was the black. It's the first, I think it's you build the town hall, and then you have to go talk to the blacksmith, and he sends you to go talk to like the blade master. You have to collect more lumber.
I quit after I refurbished the town hall.
I wanted to, but I kept going because I figured we were gonna like talk about stuff. So
Which we are.
I didn't know it was an option to leave after that. Like,
It's always an option. I did not enjoy.
I already
playing
didn't play Yoshi, so I figured I better commit to this one.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy this at all. I like.
The biggest problem is the controls. Like, I don't like how any of the touchscreen stuff works.
Me either. Maybe we should talk about how the controls work first.
So
So
you can kind of guess by looking at the screen.
you can see how fighting works. So you hold your finger on the screen, and the longer you hold it, I think the more powerful your swing is.
Yeah, and the swing only pops out when the thing turns yellow.
Yeah.
Like if you're still in the red, nothing happens.
And then on the left hand, there's a little shield icon. And you just tap that if you want to block the incoming attacks. Although it seems like you still get hit, even if you block.
You still take. I mean, yeah,
You
for
take
certain
some damage
like
still.
certain weapons seem to still do a little bit of damage, but like there's food laying around everywhere, so it doesn't really matter.
Now, all the periphery parts of this game, I was pretty impressed with. Like the character creation tool, all this stuff, like the tech trees and everything. Like, they're surprisingly robust.
Yeah, it's like they crammed the whole Elder Scrolls situation in here.
Yeah.
It's just tapping to move and having to I mean, if you redid this game as like a budget game, like on the consoles that you could play with a controller, I'd probably pay like $20 for it. Like if it played like a real Elder Scrolls. I mean, obviously this is not the scope of a real Elder Scrolls. It's just sort of like go do a mission. There's no open world. It's just like go do a mission, crawl through the dungeon, hit some stuff with a sword, and like you're done. But like
and you get teleported to places.
Yeah.
It's not like you actually travel to the dungeon.
No, you say you pick the quest and you go like start quest, and it takes you to where you're gonna do like the dungeon you're gonna do this in, and then you tap where you want to walk. The weird thing about the tapping to walk is I've played a fair number of things with like where you tap to walk and stuff. It's both in VR and in like mobile stuff. I've never seen one that has such terrible pathfinding. Like you get stuck on shit in this game. Like the whole point of tapping to walk somewhere is you should auto walk and not run into pillars. Like,
yeah, so you have to actually like line yourself up and make sure you have a clear line between you and what you tap. Because otherwise, your character just randomly gets caught on objects.
The chess system.
And it's very awkward to then get away from whatever object it is that you're stuck on. And again, this is beta, so maybe we should be a little gentle with it. But
yeah, but at the same time, like a lot of the stuff is not gonna like the chess system. You find chests in the dungeons, and when you get a chest, you don't open the chest, you get the chest.
Yeah.
And it goes in your little chest inventory, and then you're supposed to like go to the chest and open the chest, but to open the chest, you have to wait a certain amount of time for the chest to be openable. So you can pay gems to skip the wait. And like it doesn't.
It is the weirdest monetization strategy I've ever seen.
Why am I waiting for the chest to open? And like even like the basic chests take like 5 seconds to wait to open.
Yeah, it's like where are they gonna get money from this?
I mean, the silver chest presumably takes more like a couple hours or something if you find like a really good chest. But it's like,
so what? I'll go to bed. Like
right, but also it's like usually these things if they're gonna integrate them so heavily into like kind of the setting or the lore, come up with a better reason why this thing can't happen immediately. Like, does the chest need to be in the mood? Like what are you waiting for? Like what's do you have like your people
it
like
needs
working on it
first?
Like picking you have like a friend picking the lock for a few hours or something. Like what's going on? Like I don't understand why that's the mechanic you have to wait to do.
It's so weird. I've been at once pleasantly surprised and gravely disappointed by this game. It looked visually it looks really good. It looks better than I thought it was going to look.
Music's really good.
Music's good, and
honestly, good in all Elder Scrolls stuff. Though, really.
And honestly, it has more Elder Scrolls than I thought it was going to, as far as like building your character and specking out.
It is identifiably Elder Scrolls. I will give it that.
But then you have to play it,
right?
And that's where it just all goes to crap. I played this for a couple hours. And it literally drained my entire phone battery.
It's a vampire.
You can literally almost watch your battery drain on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I have an iPhone X. It's supposed to be made for this crap. I mean, it is. I mean, that's the big thing. It's like,
I have an 8, and I played it for, I played that one blacksmith quest line I played this morning, and it drained my battery by a third. Just doing that
one quest, it is a hog.
I had to plug it in because I use the phone for to read chat while we're doing this. So I had to like recharge it before we did the show because it drained it. And I mean that happens. It's nature of the beast. But like, wow, no kid. Usually you at least have to be using Wi-Fi for that to happen.
Right. Yeah. And
there is clearly some online component to this because it logs into something.
But there's a lot of looting, a lot of crafting. So when you go, after you finish a mission, you go back to like your main town.
Yeah, the town's been destroyed by like raiders or something. So like the main thrust of like what you're doing is you're trying to like rebuild your hometown, like building by building by building.
But you never go into those buildings.
No, there's not. You can't.
They're just icons, basically.
They're just locate. You live in the street apparently.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty disappointed in this game. I don't know if some of you guys have got in on the early access. I mean, anybody can now. You just go download it. It's basically released now. I don't know. Maybe somebody's played it a lot farther. I'm reluctant to pass judgment too fast over what happened with Yoshi after last week and then finishing the game. So I don't want to just say it's because somebody could have made it 8 hours into this thing and it gets awesome. I don't know. If you ever improve the walking and all that.
Didn't they say it was also coming to other platforms? Like if it came to other platforms with normal controls, it might not be terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be better.
Like give it a standard action-based combat thing or something where I don't have to like hold a frickin' touchscreen. You know,
it is very pretty though.
It is.
For a mobile game, I mean, there aren't many Switch games that look as good as this.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but it's true.
No, you don't.
It's crazy what they're doing with mobile now. It's really mind-blowing.
Well, they're more powerful than the Switch.
Yeah, it's crazy. But that didn't make it fun to play.
No, graphics aren't everything.
That's for damn sure, especially when you're talking about this game. So, look, it's free.
Just play it and imagine how good Elder Scrolls 6 will look in 7 years.
That's really the sad part. This is all the Elder Scrolls we're going to get for a long time. It's like, this is it? This is what we have to play? Until we get 6?
Unless someone over there realizes, like, hey, you might want to fast track that sucker.
Yeah. I mean, if they were counting on this to fill the coffers while they waited for their next big Elder Scrolls game, they need to reconfigure their...
Although, I don't know, maybe it will. I mean, we are not the best barometer of what mobile games are going to succeed and not succeed.
I just wonder if casual folks are going to stumble across an Elder Scrolls game.
They will if they put it high enough on the...
If they pay to get it up on the list.
App Store,
yeah. You're right. Yeah, I mean...
And hell, it looks like this. I mean, if I was just casual, and if I saw that screenshot, I would totally try it.
Yeah, and Bethesda's done pretty well with mobile. In fact, you could argue it's doing better with mobile than it is on consoles, so...
Fallout Shelter is a big hit.
It's a huge hit. So, I don't know. Maybe some of you guys have had better luck with this game. You've enjoyed it more, but I didn't really glean anything enjoyable from this game from what I played of it.
Yeah, it's not for me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm not even sure who it is for. It's probably too console-y for most mobile players, but not console-y enough.
Yeah, that's sort of part of the problem. Is like it does feel a little like it's demanding controls that just aren't here on the mobile. It's like I never thought I'd ask for a mobile game to be more dumbed down, but it kind of there.
I mean, you're kind of understanding why they're dumbed down in the first place, right? Because that's what works on the platform. So, I don't know. Maybe somebody out there is enjoying it more than I am. And you can convince me to pick it back up and give it another go. You're going to have to really, really sell me on that.
But in the meantime, sit back and wait for the PS5 version of Skyrim.
They just said
that's
inevitably going to be released before Elder Scrolls 6.
Oh, yeah, of course. Fill the gap between Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6.
Yep.
I'm right.
It's
going to happen.
What's really sad is that this may be the only part of GameFace 163 that the public ever sees. We had to talk about a god-awful game for it. So... there you go. The Elder Scrolls Blades. You can download it for free and find out for yourself, but I think you're going to find that Matt and I are right on the money on this one.
I mean, it's early access. It could always get better.
It's true. It's true. All right, it's time for our trailer of the week.
I still don't understand how the spells work.
I
clicked the spell thing, and then just like fire appeared on the side and nothing happened, and then I would just like tap on it, and like a bunch of fires.
Yeah, that's what you do. You basically initiate it, and then you still have to attack the enemy with it.
It doesn't really tell you that.
No, it doesn't. No. Figured it out. It's crazy. It's time for our trailer of the week. It's not been a great week for trailers. In fact, most of the trailers that were good this week, we ended up using in other topics, so we did the best we could. And the trailer of the week this week is for The Division 2. I basically laid out its first year of updates and DLC. A raid is coming, a bunch of other stuff. Check it out.
Agents of the Division. As the Black Tusk invaded Washington, D.C., they left their stronghold exposed. We found a breach. They will not expect us. This is our chance to save the nation.
Invasion unfolds the story of the battle for D.C. and will be deployed across 3 updates. Starting with Title Update 2 that introduces the most heavily defended and dangerous stronghold, Tidal Basin. You will need to gear up and collaborate with other agents to take on this new challenge. This update adds 2 new exotic weapons, 3 new gear sets giving you specific bonuses for new playstyles, the first apparel event to make history in style, and a new PvP map, Fort McNair. Title Update 3, Operation Dark Hours, sets the ground for the epic fight over the control of the city. Fight side by side with your friends in the first ever 8-player raid. You and your team need to gear up to face this challenge, as it will put you to the test and require expert coordination to be completed. This update also adds the first classified assignments. And Title Update 4 will bring the 4th specialization and its lethal new signature weapon.
Get instant access to 3 new specializations as they release and uncover the secrets of the fall of DC with the Year 1 Pass. The battle for DC has just begun.
Thanks to everybody who subscribed via Twitch Prime during the show. Thank you to the people who just did it and waited for our trailer of the week. Andrew9413, thank you for subscribing. And there was a couple others. The chat also is not working for me on my iPad. And Veritas. And ChevelleMan1979. Thank you guys for subscribing via Twitch Prime. It's a huge help. Won't send out the message for the YouTube folks this episode because they probably won't ever see this episode. You guys are also Freedom Rock. Wow, you have a great name.
Turn it up,
man. Thank you guys. A lot of you guys are maybe the only people who ever see this episode, the people who made it on the stream tonight. So there you go. We'll see. I'm going to do my best, but I've walked down this road before and it sucked. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah, some of the chat I'm getting is old. We're also having problems like getting the chat to work correctly right now. So let's see. Do you guys have any questions for us today? Maybe they were already in the chat and they were deleted. You're gonna have to probably.
I have them. Vincent, have you prepared your bomb shelters for when Red Dead Redemption 2 is announced as an Epic exclusive later this year?
That's possible.
Yeah, well, Take-Two already did that with, he even says, Take-Two did that with Outer Worlds.
Yep.
And now Borderlands 3.
Yep.
Buckle up.
I mean, is
Buckaroo.
there a better game for them to do that with?
No.
No. Man,
like, you want to talk about the game that puts you in a critical mass with that Epic store.
That's pretty insightful and forward-thinking, Vincent, that you picked up on that. But you're absolutely right. That is something that could happen. Joaquin Dragoon, thank you for the bits, man. That'll make the sting of losing an entire episode of GameFace hurt a little less.
W. Matthew asks, what do you think of EA leaving the AAA game development and just focusing on sports and mobile? That feels like a good move for both EA and the players. I mean, that doesn't solve the problem of no Star Wars games coming out.
I mean, I guess conceivably
and then what happens to BioWare?
They would lose the license or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think they might anyway. But,
right.
But then, like, what happens to BioWare?
They start making NBA Live.
But really in-depth
But you know what? BioWare could not make a worse basketball game than the one that EA has been making.
Yeah. I mean, you got, okay, so like you've got 5 players on the court. BioWare games traditionally have 4 major places where quests happen, and the last. So okay, so you play the point guard, and you have to go on quests to get the other players, your starting lineup.
Hey, I would buy that freaking game.
I've already come up with
It would be the first ever great sports RPG.
And you have to play like pickup games to like beat like the locals to convince the guys that you like.
We just figured it all out. We just figured out what's going to happen for BioWare. They're going to start
NBA
making
RPG
sports games, or they should make like a Madden RPG.
Yeah.
I joke, but it might happen. I hate to say it, but it's not that implausible that EA would be like, let's pivot these guys.
They just rip BioWare apart and make them do like the story modes for Madden.
For Madden, yeah, it wouldn't shock me. Nothing would shock me at this point. Anything else? We probably lost our whole audience when the stream went down.
Joaquin Dragoon, what do you think the big game will be for Square Enix in the fall? My money is on Avengers. You'd like to think that, but like we're going to have to wait till E3 to see if they actually show Avengers. It feels to me like the reason they wouldn't have shown Avengers until now is because something about the Avengers game ties in with what Endgame turns out to be.
What the hell? Now this is the last movie. They're going to put it out, and like the IP is going to be kind of like yesterday's news.
Not remotely.
Yeah.
The Marvel movies are the zeitgeist.
Or people will be begging for more at that point.
They want begging for more. It'll be coming out on video around the fall.
That's probably what'll happen.
It's probably the most anticipated film of all time. It took 6 hours to out pre-sell the previous record holder, which is The Force Awakens, which was probably one of the most anticipated movies before that.
Yeah.
And before that,
I'm
Phantom
surprised
Menace.
that this is more anticipated than that.
Here's the thing, and this is the interesting thing about this anticipation for Endgame versus the other two most anticipated films of all time in terms of sort of the pop culture zeitgeist are probably Phantom Menace and The Force Awakens. The interesting thing about those two is that they were anticipated because they are the return and sort of semi-reboot of the franchise that has been gone for a long time. It had been 16 years since Return of the Jedi when Phantom Menace came out. 20 years old next month.
Crazy.
And then Force Awakens, obviously it had been 10 years since Revenge of the Sith. Mm-hmm. Endgame is the first majorly anticipated film of this nature, blockbuster sci-fi film of this nature. The reason it's anticipated is not because something people love has been gone and is returning. It's because something has been a constant presence and a positively received thing by the audience for 11 years.
Right.
They are not returning in glory. They are building to a crescendo, which no one has ever done in film before.
Yeah, not to this extent, for sure.
No, like this is unprecedented, and everything Marvel Studios has done building to this goes against every form of industry wisdom.
Yeah,
they have
bucked
everything. And also notice that no other studio working out of the major players has pulled off anything similar.
Yeah,
because it's so weird. There's no game plan.
You're playing the really long game as well. I mean,
they are. We're looking at possibly an $800 million opening weekend, which puts it in striking distance of Avatar.
It's crazy.
So yeah, and also remember, the Marvel movies are going to define an entire generation, and already have to some degree. Like you've already got people like YouTubers in their 20s with jobs and careers and everything talking about how when Iron Man 1 came out, they were 12.
Yeah.
These people grew up with these movies. So yeah, it will always be viable to put an Avengers game out. This fall would be a very good time for it. I
think you're right on. Whenever the rental comes out on Blu-ray.
So look, if we don't see it at E3, it's not coming out this year. But like my suggestion for why we haven't seen anything of it is partly because development started pretty much at the same time they announced they had the license, but also because I think it's going to cover everything as much as they can, or like at the very least it's going to jump off from where Endgame leaves the world or the universe, like whatever they do with that, if it's a giant reset button or whatever, who knows. But my guess is that they just have not been allowed to show it because it would give something away.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Any other questions? Oh, here's one from Majora Tom. Do you think with digital distribution only increasing in how people purchase games, you think we see a resurgence in single-player games, or will it be only a handful of companies pursuing single-player? Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about this a little earlier, although you'll never know because the show was lost. It's really bizarre. We did talk about it earlier, though. Yes. We were talking more specifically about how it's affecting GameStop and how GameStop itself is pushing people to digital. Mm-hmm. Which is keeping people from coming in and spending money at their stores. And it's like this self-repeating cycle of doom for GameStop. But will that result in a resurgence of single-player games? I guess he's saying, like, single-player games are the one thing that's, like, resellable.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like like more of a symptom than a a motivation.
Yeah. I don't see digital really affecting how games are developed.
Yeah.
Publishers just want to make money. And it's very easier to see a path to riches on a product that lasts versus a product that's a flash in the pan and is here one day and is gone the next. And
like the motivation of the cramming multiplayer modes and everything did come from trying to get people to not sell their games back immediately. Yeah. But I don't think the appeal of having someone engage with your game longer and then possibly buying more microtransactions is going away just because things are digital now.
No, I don't think so either.
It'd be nice.
It would.
I do like the single-player games, but
Freedom Rock, do you have any thoughts on the new Samurai Showdown from what you have seen so far?
Looks good.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by it. And I'm an old school Samurai Showdown fan. I know there aren't many, but I am one of them. I loved that game back in the day.
I love 1 and 2. I think 3 and 4 sort of went off the rails a bit, and then it went 3D, and that was bad.
Yeah.
But 1 and 2 are some of my favorite 2D fighters from that era.
Samurai Showdown 2, I think, is probably, in my opinion, the best in the series. I loved it because it was just so eclectic. Like, the characters, none of them really fit into a style or anything.
That's funny because they are all actually like archetypes of Japanese no drama. And
what's that mean? No drama.
NOH. It's a form of stage stuff. Like that's specifically what's the Kabuki theater guy is similar to that. But almost every character in that game is based in kind of a stock archetype from like Japanese like samurai chambara.
So if you're Japanese, they are the ultimate like stereotype.
Or if you know like the old like Kurosawa movie, like just sort of like that kind of thing. Like they're called chambara. It's like sort of like almost samurai soap operas.
I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
But yeah, they've all kind of got the down to the taciturn samurai with tuberculosis, Suzukiyo.
Yeah.
And you've got all that kind
got the guy with the bird.
Yeah, Nakaruru has the bird. Nakaruru is Nakaruru. Is actually from like the north, like up in like Hokkaido. She's like one of the natives of Japan who have traditionally been discriminated against. That's why she's like kind of got like there's a stereotype of like them being like in touch with nature, so like we have with like Native Americans. So actually, she's sort of an offensive stereotype now, but they're gonna keep it because fuck it. And yeah, Galford is like the loudmouth American who comes in and like thinks he can be a samurai or a ninja. Like they're all there. It's just we're not familiar with them, so it feels like fresh to us. And like that was kind of the appeal of that game back in the day. Also, the fact that you could cut people in half. Like there wasn't a lot of blood in fighting games.
No, there wasn't.
It was before Mortal Kombat when the first one came out, and like the fact that you could like jump in and like cut a guy in half at the end of a round, or like you could like sometimes you hit them and they just stand there and like all the blood would spit out of them like in that like in Yojimbo. Like that was really cool too. Like it wasn't like anything else. I mean, SNK games kind of had the fighters had that advantage where they didn't feel like Capcom fighters or like sort of the weird Midway stuff. They had their own identity, but like Samurai Showdown was just like nothing else. It was a lot of fun.
Sam, I just realized that the camera is like all reset because they lost power. Yeah. So now they're like all zoomed out. Flip through them real quick.
That one doesn't even work.
Which one?
Yours.
Oh, it's like all bugged out.
I know, Matt.
Yeah, this has been an interesting episode. Let's answer one or two more because that's all the show that we have.
Yeah.
Commander Fett03. No surprise he's asking a Star Wars question. Do you guys think that if Fallen Jedi doesn't do well, that Disney will take back the Star Wars license and try out different developers instead of just one developer like they currently are? They can't just drop them because they have a contract.
Yeah, the contract's there, but I think that's their plan when the contract runs out, which wouldn't be for a few more years. But the fact that Lucasfilm is starting Lucasfilm Games again, which is what they were called before they changed the name to LucasArts back in the day, the fact that they're starting that kind of department up again indicates to me that they have decided they need a group to sort of supervise the EA situation, and also like dedicated to that. And also, you don't form that wing of Lucasfilm unless you think you are going to have to manage individual developers. Because the point of contracting EA to do that is that you don't need that Lucasfilm Games thing because they will take care of that. But if you're forming your own sort of branch on that, that says to me that they are planning to move forward and like we will handle this, and maybe EA will still make Star Wars games, but I don't think they're going to have the exclusive license on it.
Or maybe they're creating a division just to wrangle whoever has the license.
That's possible too.
Because it could be a case where they're like, this is a headache, and like we don't really have the people here to like do this, right? And we don't want to do it.
But the trick there is that it's this. They did have those people. They just didn't have. They didn't have a named branch.
Yeah.
If you're going to publicly form this division, it says to me that you are planning to go outside of your existing contract.
Yeah. Well, you can do that. You can also, once you have that division, you have a new business unit. You can start staffing up, and it feels like.
So I don't think
those people were there, but they probably weren't just doing that.
For the most part, I think they were, but it was just. I don't think it was an acknowledged priority in the company.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was like, oh, you guys can just do that. That's what you've always done. And it's like I think now like you're sort of like formalizing it to a degree. And also I still think because like I don't think you're going to see them take the contract away from EA when that's up and give the exclusive contract to Ubisoft. Say I think Star Wars games are going to be contracted out to developer or publisher one at a time who's most suitable.
That's
for
a
whatever
way
they want,
better idea.
Which is how they used to do it.
It is,
You know,
yeah.
so
That's the way it should have stayed.
So I think that's how Fallen Jedi, one way or the other, I don't think makes or breaks it, but it certainly will help mend that relationship a little bit. Although at the same time, Fallen Order is sort of being made by the rebels of EA's stable. So the fact that like it took like Respawn and Vince sort of like going rogue a little bit and making this thing like, and like EA couldn't get together with one of their normal in-house people doesn't say a whole lot for them either.
Yep.
Especially because it's not using Frostbite. Like, I really can't emphasize the fact that they went Unreal with this enough.
Yeah.
Because in part, maybe because if you're doing a Jedi game, the last thing you want to have to try and do is come up with a melee combat system in that Frostbite engine.
Yep. Okay.
Because, geez.
Yeah. It's not very flexible.
Whereas Unreal already has some tools to deal with that.
Plenty. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it will help the relationship. I don't think it will solve the problem because Respawn is not really part of that system. If you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like when you think about what's happening with the BioWare stuff, like in terms of like Shire's Anthem article, like I don't associate Respawn with that same level of like interconnectivity with EA.
No.
Even though they're owned by EA now, it feels like they're sort of the rebel bad boys a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think that like Fallen Order is something that's going to make or break the deal with EA.
But it ain't going to hurt.
Disney. It wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
But I feel like
Disney
whatever
already has their opinion.
Right. Whatever's going to happen, I think that decision's already been made.
Yeah, that's already out the window. And the fact that they've formed Lucasfilm Games to me says
I mean, it may impact the fact that they'll be like, okay, if we want to make another lightsaber game, we'll have Respawn make it.
Yeah.
But
or maybe we won't force whoever we want to make that to use Frostbite.
Right. But
Just
whether
use
it
what they've already
impacts
set up.
things bigger than that, I don't think so. I think those decisions are being made on a much higher level with much more
And I mean,
more data
at the very least, it's going to help in the sense that like, oh, you made something that wasn't Battlefront. Good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you kind of formed a mini dream team for that. You went to Respawn, the people who made Call of Duty, and you went to Vince, and then he got Stig, the guy who made God of War 3, and you put together a Jedi. It's like, duh. I mean, it's exactly what you should have been doing. It's what EA should have been doing from the start. They should have made their own developer team to make Star Wars games. And to some degree they did with Amy Hennig and Visceral and all that stuff. Like, that's what they did. But they just didn't, it wasn't there.
I think a big problem for EA is a lot of the studios that it owns are living in, like, the dark ages. I think that's what I really took away from Schreier's BioWare thing, is that BioWare operates like it's still 2003. And that's not the way people make games anymore. It's just not. It's this very intricate but very organized process. And Respawn knows how to do it. It may be one of the studios that created modern game development as far as how do you create a gigantic product in 2 years. Because that's what they had to do.
Right.
They had to make Call of Duty in like a year or two every time. And they just learned how the processes work.
And I'll tell you one of the ways that Respawn's process doesn't work, they don't attribute the last 4 months of development to magic.
Right. Yeah. They know what they're doing in the last 4 months.
Like, you can't be Jeffrey Rush in Shakespeare in Love going around like, oh, it'll all work out. Nobody knows. It's a mystery. Like, it's not.
No, Respawn makes sure it's going to work out. Yeah. So.
And Stig,
Yeah.
Like, no. Is his name, right?
Stig Musin. Stig Asmussen.
Asmussen,
Yeah.
Like, that dude knows how to put a frickin' single-player game together.
Yeah, he does, but he also had some leeway working Sony first party for a long time.
Yeah.
But that's probably good. It's good that you have Vince, the taskmaster, who knows how to keep a project on time, and you have Stig, who's a little bit more of a dreamer, a little bit more of like, hey, well, maybe if we have an extra week or two, we could do something like this. Sometimes good stuff comes out of that.
Yep,
so
these guys made one of the best campaigns in recent memory with Titanfall 2.
Yeah.
Which, if you haven't played, you should.
Yep.
For like whatever $5 that
they
game
ain't get it
costs
for
or something.
nothing.
If they can bring even half that level of quality to the campaign in this game, you're going to be looking at one of the best Star Wars games ever. And from a narrative perspective, you're going to be looking at KOTOR level shit.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. I hope it looks good.
Yeah.
We're about to find out.
We are going to find out. So we're going to cap it there. Since this may be the only part of GameFace that some people ever see, I'm going to go over a couple things that I mentioned at the show open. We got our stickers. So one of the Patreon tiers is Sticker Shock. And if you pledge $1,500 or more per month for at least 1 month, you get a set of stickers that we created, and I have them here. I want to show them to you. I'm actually going to walk up to the camera so you can really see them. You get 3 different designs. The first one, see if we can get the camera to focus on it, is the Sifted Graffiti logo. And these stickers are clear, so you can put them on your windows of your car or whatever, and they have no background on them. You just see the gold. Second one is Joystick. And these are white vinyl stickers with black screened on them. All these stickers, by the way, should hold up very well in weather. They're all vinyl stickers, and we went the extra mile to get good ones, as we always do with every piece of merch we make. And then the last one is a bumper sticker that says Sifter, and the eye is the Joystick logo and has a little sifted.net there. So stick that on your bumper or on your window of your car and help promote the site. So anyway, again, that's a reward that's going out to people who have pledged $15 or more per month. If you pledged $15 last month and then drop down this month, that's okay. We're going to go back and retroactively send this stuff out and make sure you guys get it. One thing that would be awesome, if you guys could go on Patreon and just proactively send us a message with your mailing address, that will keep us from having to go and do 100 different messages to all you guys. If not, it's fine. We'll do it anyway. So anyway, I promised you I'd show you the stickers this week, and I wanted to do that, and now I have. So who knows what's going to end up happening with this episode? We may get the whole thing. We may only get the last topic. It's going to really suck over the next couple days. One thing I can promise you, the show is definitely not going up tomorrow. The last time this happened, we kind of recovered the show. It was still really crappy. So we'll do the best we can. That's all we can do. And thank you guys for sticking around even after the stream dropped and still being on to do our Q&A and hang out with us at the end. So everyone have a great night. GameFace is up and out.